He sought the ultimate heights of martial arts, yet he eventually realized that even an entire lifetime would not be enough to reach them. In order to overturn this harsh truth, he placed his faith in an ancient legend, one that claimed that deep within a sacred sanctuary, protected by a divine dragon, there existed a golden fruit. This fruit was said to possess the power of immortality. Driven by unwavering determination, he set out on a perilous journey to obtain this legendary treasure. After enduring countless hardships, he finally confronted the divine dragon and, through that encounter, confirmed that the golden fruit truly existed, the fabled fruit of immortality. At last, he approached the sacred tree bearing the golden fruit and grasped it, declaring that with this power, he could continue pursuing the ultimate heights of martial arts. Without hesitation, he consumed the fruit, and his body was instantly overwhelmed by a powerful surge of energy. His name was Gilfas Eldragon. The man hailed as the strongest in the world. Several decades later, Gilfas lay on his deathbed as his son and grandson came to see him for the final time. The one standing by his side was Gilliam, the first son of the Eldragon family. Gilfas slowly opened his eyes. In his heart, Gilfas reflected that, in the end, the legends he once believed in could not be passed on. Still, he felt fortunate to have been blessed with a loving wife and devoted children, and had no regrets. Yet, that was far from the truth. In reality, he carried countless regrets. He admitted that if he had been given more time, he would have reached the martial arts peak that still eluded him. With those final thoughts, Gilfas passed away, causing Gilliam to cry out in grief. Gilfas' life came to an end, or so it seemed. The very next moment, Gilfas found himself opening his eyes as a baby. Confused, he wondered if he had merely been sleeping. As he looked at the wall, he recognized the familiar wallpaper of the annex. Not only that, but his body felt incredibly light. When he examined his hands, he was stunned to see that they were those of an infant. Realizing that he had been reborn as a baby left him in complete shock. Even under such an overwhelming situation, Gilfas maintained his composure and calmly began to think. For someone of his level, who had reached the 10-star realm, to be involved in such a bizarre phenomenon without sensing it beforehand was completely unnatural. He questioned who could have done this and how it was possible. Then, his thoughts returned to the battle against the divine dragon and the moment he consumed the golden fruit. At last, he understood that the fruit's true effect was not immortality, but reincarnation. This realization filled him with delight. Though unexpected, this outcome granted him another chance to pursue the ultimate heights of martial arts. Looking around, Gilfas noticed that many other babies were sleeping in the same room. Being in the annex meant that he had been reborn into the Eldragon family once again, though he could not understand why so many infants were gathered there. Moments later, numerous maids entered the room, carrying feeding bottles and jugs filled with potion. As the maids began filling the feeders, Gilfas realized that it appeared to be feeding time. One maid instructed another to prepare the mixture, after which they brought in a goblin and forced it to drink the red potion. After consuming it, the goblin was suddenly taken down. Gilfas was startled and questioned what had just happened. The maids calmly remarked that this much is sufficient. The potion should be safe for feeding the children. They then began distributing it to the babies in the room. Eventually, a maid reached Gilfas and lifted him while he was still trying to comprehend what the infants were being fed. He immediately realized that it was not milk. He tried to resist, sensing the immense source power contained within the liquid and recognizing how dangerous it was for newborns. However, unable to overcome a baby's natural instincts, he began drinking it regardless. Gilfas was startled, having momentarily forgotten his current condition. Upon tasting it, he realized that the liquid was ancient dragon core potion, and understood that the earlier dilution was meant to reduce its lethality. By then, he had already swallowed a small amount. Though dangerous, the quantity was not enough to kill him. Noticing that other babies were instinctively spitting it out, Gilfas considered doing the same to avoid disaster. However, he hesitated. Instead, he recognized this as a rare opportunity. If he could absorb all of this source power, he might surpass even his former self and finally reach the ultimate heights of martial arts. With that resolve, he continued drinking, fully committing to the risk. The dragon potion surged through his body. Overwhelming his senses, Gilfas does not give up and deliberately begins drinking the potion. The maid is shocked when she realizes that the baby is consuming it on his own. Gilfas decides to absorb all of the ancient dragon's source power, believing that this will finally allow him to pursue the ultimate heights of martial arts that he failed to reach in his previous life. Unlike before, the ancient dragon's source power is absorbed with surprising ease. Finding this outcome ideal, Gilfas continues drinking until none of it remains. Once he finishes, the maid gently places him back onto the bed. Somehow, Gilfas manages to endure the process, and the other babies appear to have survived as well. This leads Gilfas to remark that a baby's survival instinct should never be underestimated. Shortly after, overcome by fatigue, Gilfas slowly fell asleep. 7 years later, Gilfas is seen performing handstand push-ups. After completing 100 repetitions, he releases a large stone he had been gripping with his feet and tosses it into the air before smoothly standing upright. After only 7 years of training, Gilfas is highly satisfied with the remarkable physique he has developed, thanks to the ancient dragon's potion. The former head of the Eldragon family, Gilfas, is now known as Zeke Eldragon. All living beings possess source power, and the ancient dragon's potion that Zeke and the other children were made to consume contained an immense concentration of it. As a result, the babies who drank it, to varying degrees, developed bodies far stronger than those of ordinary people. When combined with the source power of the divine dragon that Gilfas defeated in his previous life, which still resides within him, Zeke, who was the only baby to fully absorb the ancient dragon's source power, underwent changes that surprised even himself. However, after cultivating for some time, Zeke remains dissatisfied, as he has only reached the 1-star level. In his view, the situation is unacceptable, as by now he should have achieved at least 4 stars. Stars represent one's source power compressed to its limit, with the body regarded as a universe in which these stars float. The greater the number of stars, the stronger the individual becomes, though each additional star is increasingly difficult to form. In his previous life, Zeke, then known as Gilfas, had reached an unprecedented 10 stars, making him a unique existence in the world. Gazing at the distant mountains, Zeke reflects on how quickly time has passed. 7 years have gone by since his rebirth as an illegitimate child of the current head of the Eldragon family. His mother has already passed away, and his father has never once appeared before him. This leads Zeke to question the family head's qualities as a father. More than that, he is astonished by the fact that he has been reborn 1,000 years into the future. Reincarnation alone would have been shocking, but awakening a millennium later reveals that the world has transformed into a harsh realm governed by extreme survival of the fittest. A clear example of this is the practice of making infants consume ancient dragon's potion, a test known as the dragon trial. Only the babies who survive this trial are meant to receive education as Eldragon warriors, or so it is supposed to be. Lost in these thoughts, Zeke notices a maid standing nearby, though she never provides answers to any meaningful questions. For 7 years, not a single instructor has come to train him. Finding this situation strange, Zeke confronts the maid, pointing out that those who pass the dragon trial are meant to receive combat training, yet he has only ever been attended by maids. The maid calmly asks if there is a problem. Zeke responds that he is not troubled, explaining that physical conditioning is currently more important to him than combat instruction, and that he can manage that aspect on his own. However, he adds that he would at least like some information about the other children or the main family. The maid replies that she is not permitted to answer such questions. Zeke insists that he is merely asking about family matters, but the maid continues to refuse. Growing irritated, Zeke releases a hint of his immense energy and asks if that is truly all she is capable of saying. Nevertheless, it has no effect, and the maid repeats once more that she is not allowed to provide any information. Zeke comments that his treatment has been somewhat harsh, to which the maid replies that they have only been ordered to attend to Zeke's daily needs. She adds that she herself is a 3-star practitioner, meaning she would be sufficient for basic combat instruction. For that reason, Zeke gives up on asking further questions and decides to head toward the forest, remarking that living together for 7 years while having only minimal interaction is far too unusual. The maid offers no response. As Zeke walks away, He turns back and asks if she is now deliberately ignoring him. Zeke enters the forest and cuts some poisonous grass, eating it while commenting that it is still disgusting and unpleasant, though he considers it part of his training. Although he maintains his patience, he has been continuously sensing a gaze following him, and he truly wishes something could be done about it. Soon after, Zeke sighs, saying that he did not expect them to reveal themselves over something so trivial, and tells the spy that if they have something to say, they should come out openly. As he searches for the hidden observer, Zeke instead notices an enraged boar surrounded by dense black mist, something he realizes did not exist 1,000 years ago. Wondering what kind of creature it is, Zeke watches as the boar senses him and charges forward. Zeke smiles at the sight, effortlessly dodging the boar's attack before striking it with a single punch and taking it down. He is surprised to find that even a light blow against a creature at the same 1-star level produces such overwhelming power. This pleases Zeke, as the quality of 1 stars is extremely important. Afterward, he lifts the boar and begins leaving the forest, pondering whether he should set out on a journey since he is growing weary of being neglected. If he ever decides to leave, he concludes that the sea would be his destination. The scene then shifts to the martial artist who had been spying on Zeke. He is deeply confused, as Zeke manifested a star without any instruction and defeated an enraged boar in a single strike. Even more troubling is the fact that Zeke noticed his concealed presence. Taking everything into account, the man realizes that Zeke is far from ordinary. His mother died young, his father shows no interest in him, and there is no possible way the child could have received proper training. However, because the blood of the family head flows within Zeke, he is not permitted to leave the family and must remain under constant surveillance. Sitting beside a tree, the brown-haired man remarks that although Zeke is illegitimate, he still carries the head's bloodline, making the situation quite intriguing for the future. With that thought, the man disappears. Zeke soon returns home, where he notices 3 4-star fighters and 1 5-star warrior waiting inside. This immediately makes him wonder what people of such caliber could want. Curious, Zeke secretly listens in on their conversation. The fighters are speaking with their captain about how clean the countryside air is and how there are no nearby rifts, suggesting that there is likely little chaos in the area. Zeke determines that they do not appear hostile and therefore are not here for an assassination. With that in mind, he steps into the room and asks them directly what business they have. The fighters, who appear to be soldiers, immediately salute and bow upon seeing him. They introduce themselves, stating that this is their first meeting and that they have come to escort Zeke to take an examination. Hearing this, Zeke is taken completely by surprise and replies that he has not been taught anything at all. After arriving at the academy, Zeke stands in front of the academy building, remarking that he never thought he would return to the main estate. Shortly afterward, he was brought back by messengers from the main house, though not to live there permanently. The servants have Zeke change into the academy's uniform, as entry onto the grounds is not permitted otherwise. Over the past 1,000 years, the Eldragon family has established a dedicated educational institution, and all children born into the family aim to enter this dragon's nest, receiving education within their respective homes until the age of 7. Today marks the entrance examination. However, Zeke has not been taught anything at all. Even so, taking the examination is mandatory, which is why he was brought all the way from the frontier. Zeke sits by the street, reflecting on how all of his preparations to leave that house amounted to nothing once they forcibly sent him to the academy. Seeing Zeke in this state, Ringis, a boy from Ordscale village, approaches him and asks if he is all right or facing any trouble. Slightly startled, Zeke turns and asks who he is, prompting Ringis to introduce himself and explain that Zeke looked distressed. Zeke senses the inner energy flowing through Ringis and comments that while it seems timid, it is surprisingly perceptive. Standing up, Zeke apologizes and introduces himself in return. He then admits that he is confused about what they are expected to do during the examination. Ringis, who appears introverted and nervous, explains that the test content does not change from year to year and generally remains the same. Zeke denies having any knowledge of the test, stating that he truly does not know what it involves. Hearing Zeke's admission, Ringis becomes visibly shocked and worries that Zeke may not be all right, as participating in the examination without knowing its contents seems extremely reckless. Just as Ringiz is about to explain the test, Retin, also from Ordscale Village, interrupts, calling Ringiz a weakling. Startled, Ringiz turns around in fear. Retin continues mocking him, asking why someone as weak as Ringiz is even here and suggesting that he may have lost his way home. Ringiz tries to respond, stating that he is here for the dragon's nest examination, but Retin cuts him off, sneering that there is no way Ringiz could ever be accepted. Retin then smirks and reveals that Ringiz's father is a pseudo-dragon, using this fact to further belittle him. Zeke notices Ringiz trembling under the ridicule. Within the Eldragon family, a strict hierarchy exists under an absolute monarch. At the top are novice whelp dragons, followed by regular soldier child dragons, captain-level adult dragons, executive-level elder dragons, and finally, at the very bottom, pseudo-dragons. Those who fail to enter the dragon's nest or are unable to graduate are labeled as such, meaning immature ones. However, Ringiz longs to prove that pseudo-dragons are not inferior. As Ringiz sinks into despair, Zeke steps in, questioning how they can judge him without allowing him to try first. Retin turns his attention to Zeke, demanding to know who he is and whether he has a problem. Zeke calmly responds that he is merely asking an honest question and requests an explanation as to why it is supposedly impossible for Ringiz to pass the dragon's nest examination. Retin scoffs and bluntly states that it is because Ringiz is weak. Zeke looks at Ringiz, releases a faint aura, and remarks that Ringiz is likely far stronger than Retin and his companions. This statement infuriates them, as they cannot tolerate being called weak themselves. However, before the argument can escalate further, one of the guards arrives and calls for the attention of all examinees. The adult dragon examiner announces that the dragon's nest entrance examination is about to begin and instructs all applicants to register in order before proceeding quickly with their numbered tags. Hearing the announcement, Retin decides to leave, planning to cause trouble for Zeke later. Zeke lets out a sigh, remarking that Retin did not need to get that angry, and comments that young people these days are far too short-tempered. Hearing this, Ringiz responds in confusion, pointing out that they are all the same age and that anyone would be upset after being told that Ringiz was stronger. Zeke replies that since the examination is mandatory, declaring something impossible without even testing it is unreasonable. Ringiz then reveals that examinees are actually allowed to withdraw. Realizing that Zeke truly knows nothing about the process, Ringiz is taken aback. Zeke himself is surprised upon hearing this and admits that he had no idea. Ringiz advises Zeke to withdraw so he will not get hurt, but Zeke smirks and states that someone of his skill level could not withdraw even if he wanted to. Ringiz praises Zeke's confidence, even though he knows that Zeke is unaware of the test's contents. Zeke urges them to hurry, warning that the test will soon begin. Still confused, Ringiz agrees, and the two head off together to take the examination. The instructor then explains the test, which is surprisingly simple. The examinees only need to scratch a rock in order to pass. No personal weapons are allowed, though weapons prepared by the academy may be used, and bare hands are also permitted. The instructor adds that each examinee is given only 3 attempts to pass the test. Sitting among the students, Zeke comments that it is an unexpectedly easy examination, which startles Ringiz. Zeke reasons that merely scratching a rock should be simple. After undergoing a brutal test such as the dragon trial, he had expected a far more intimidating test. As a result, he finds the examination anticlimactic. The guard announces the start of the test and calls the first examinee forward. The student swings a sword with all his strength and strikes the rock, but in the next instant, his arm is severely injured, shocking Zeke. The student collapses to the ground in pain. The inspector declares the first attempt a failure and, with 2 attempts remaining, asks if the student wishes to try again. The student refuses, and the attempt is officially marked as abandoned. The instructor calls for the next examinee to step forward. This scene infuriates Zeke, and he asks Ringiz what kind of rock it is. Ringiz explains that it is called a regeneration stone, a material that instantly repairs even minor scratches. Additionally, when struck with brute force, it reflects the attack back at hundreds of times its original power. Hearing this, Zeke remarks that such a material is absurd. Ringies adds that if one properly circulates source power throughout the body before attacking, the stone can be scratched safely. From this explanation, Zeke concludes that the ability to control source power is more important than the quality of one's martial techniques. Observing the examinees, Zeke estimates that quite a few will manage to pass the test, including Retin and his companions. The examination continues, but students fail one after another. Eventually, the number called is 315, Zeke's number. Ringies grows extremely anxious and once again suggests that Zeke withdraw, but Zeke calmly steps forward, telling Ringies not to worry. As Zeke approaches the stone, the instructor looks at him closely and senses an extraordinary presence radiating from his body. Zeke informs the inspector that he will not be using a weapon, as he believes it will not be necessary and that his fists are sufficient. The surrounding students are shocked to learn that Zeke intends to fight barehanded. They whisper among themselves, claiming that even if Zeke is skilled at manipulating source power, there is no way he could leave a scratch on the stone without a weapon. Many of them speculate that his entire arm could be severely injured. Hearing these comments, Ringies becomes extremely worried, thinking that this outcome was inevitable and that perhaps he should have tried harder to stop Zeke. As the instructor signals the start of the test, Zeke studies the rock carefully. He realizes that it is a mineral he has never seen in his previous life, but he assumes it must be a product of the 1,000 years that have passed. Many things in this era are unfamiliar to him, yet he decides that it does not matter. Zeke then channels all of his energy into his fist, preparing to strike. Ringies, filled with anxiety, shouts Zeke's name, hoping to stop him. Ignoring the warning, Zeke wears a battle-driven smile and punches the rock, believing that this is the moment to unleash his full power in his current body. Zeke activates the first form of the Dragon Destruction combat arts, Burst Strike, and shatters the rock completely. Dust explodes outward, reaching Ringies and the surrounding students. Even the instructor is left in awe by the sight. Zeke smiles and comments that the technique was still slightly too advanced for his present state, as his hand suffers an injury, making him realize that he still requires much more training. The students stand frozen in silence, staring in disbelief with their mouths wide open. Retin clicks his tongue in frustration after witnessing the shattered stone, while a female student watches Zeke with clear interest. Among them all, Ringies is the most stunned. The instructor finds the situation unbelievable. The regeneration stone has completely disappeared, something that should only be possible for someone at 4-star level or higher. There is simply no way a child should be capable of such a feat. Even so, the instructor acknowledges that although Zeke is an illegitimate child, he truly carries the bloodline of the family head. Moreover, the technique Zeke used feels strangely familiar, as if the instructor has seen it somewhere before. Zeke then turns toward the examiner and calmly asks about his test results. The instructor announces that Zeke has passed the examination, and another soldier steps forward to hand him a potion. Confused, Zeke asks what it is, but the soldier does not respond. Instead, the instructor urges the soldier to hurry and clear the area. After leaving, Zeke vents his frustration, shouting that people in this era are excessively prickly and lack composure. Ringies, still overwhelmed by what he witnessed, praises Zeke for his incredible performance. Zeke casually responds that it was easy, then shows Ringies the potion and asks about it. Ringies explains that it is a healing potion. Realizing that Zeke is unfamiliar with healing potions as well, Ringies opens it and explains that it is a standard one. He hands it back to Zeke, who inspects the liquid and determines that it does not appear to be poisonous. He wonders whether it might be a form of spirit medicine. Cloud-piercing clarity wood. This medicine is refined from extremely rare materials. Its ingredients include medicinal herbs that only grow within secret realms, as well as cores filled with high-purity source power taken from divine beasts and phantom beasts, creatures that are exceedingly difficult to even encounter. When consumed, it instantly heals injuries, removes old scars, and greatly enhances one's source power. However, due to the rarity of its materials and the difficulty of refinement, such medicine almost never appears in the world. Without hesitation, Zeke drinks the potion in a single gulp. In the very next moment, his injured arm is completely healed. With an astonished expression, Zeke shouts and asks if the potion truly was spirit medicine. Ringies replies that he does not know much about spirit medicine, but the healing potions prepared by the Eldragon family are definitely superior to those sold commercially. Hearing this, Zeke is deeply surprised, prompting Ringies to ask whether it is really that shocking. Zeke responds that it is, explaining that such severe injuries were healed instantly. After observing his condition more carefully, Zeke realizes that there does not seem to be any increase in source power, unlike what would occur with true spirit medicine. From Ringies' perspective, Zeke himself was far more impressive, but Zeke dismisses the compliment, telling Ringies not to be ridiculous. Zeke then looks at the potion again, reflecting on how remarkable it is and how much wisdom humanity has accumulated over the past 1,000 years. Zeke and Ringies return to their seats, and once again Ringies praises Zeke, saying that he was incredibly strong. Zeke replies calmly that he is aiming to become the strongest in the world. Hearing such a statement delivered so casually leaves Ringies stunned, prompting him to remark on how unbelievable Zeke sounds. Soon after, numbers 383, 395, and 405 are announced as having passed, these being Retin and his group of bullies. Zeke thinks that this outcome is exactly as he expected, while Ringies begins shivering after hearing that they succeeded. At last, it is Ringies' turn. He awkwardly makes his way down, and noticing his behavior, Zeke asks why he is so nervous when he should have no trouble. Zeke raises his voice, urging Ringies to pull himself together. Ringies tearfully responds, asking Zeke not to raise the standard so high. As the test begins, Zeke watches in confusion as Ringies prepares. Ringies chooses to use a sword and strikes the rock with all his strength, only for the force to rebound. The instructor announces that the first attempt has failed and informs Ringies that he has 2 attempts remaining. Ringies gathers himself and tries again, but once more he fails to scratch the stone and collapses to the ground. He stares at his trembling hands in despair. Seeing this, one of Retin's companions laughs mockingly, taunting Ringies and claiming that a pseudo-dragon's child could never accomplish anything and should simply give up. Retin then turns to Zeke, sarcastically asking what happened to his earlier claim that Ringies was stronger than Retin's group, pointing out that Ringies is now lying helplessly on the ground. The taunting continues until the instructor announces that Ringies has only 1 attempt left and asks whether he wishes to try again. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Ringies begins to give up. At that moment, Zeke steps in and asks Ringies what he is doing. Zeke walks down to the testing area and questions why Ringies is using a sword instead of a spear. Ringies, confused, asks what Zeke means. Zeke clarifies that he means exactly what he said and questions why Ringies would choose an unsuitable weapon without any plan. Zeke continues, stating that in Ringies' current condition, no matter how hard he tries, he will never manage to scratch the stone with a sword. Hearing this, the surrounding students burst into laughter, calling Zeke foolish and pointing out that Ringies' father does not use spears and taught him swordsmanship instead. They continue mocking Ringies, insisting that changing weapons will not alter the result. Zeke then turns to the examiner and asks whether changing weapons in the middle of the test is permitted. The examiner replies that it is allowed. Zeke smiles at Ringies and says that this means Ringies can change his weapon. He then asks whether Ringies intends to leave things as they are or stand up and try again. Encouraged by Zeke's words, Ringies becomes determined and rises to his feet, declaring that he will attempt the test again, this time using a spear. Ringies' father was unable to enter the dragon's nest. As a result, he was labeled a pseudo-dragon and ridiculed by others. Even so, Ringies' father did not become bitter and instead raised his son with care and dignity. The Ringies that his father raised is not fake. Today, here and now, Ringies will prove that. If Ringies were to try again with the sword, the result would be the same. Because of this, and choosing the best possible course of action, Ringies decides to trust Zeke, even though he has no idea how to properly use a spear. Seeing Ringies hesitate, Zeke instructs him to simply thrust forward without overthinking anything. He tells him that all he needs to do is thrust straight ahead. Logically speaking, merely thrusting forward with a spear Ringies has never used before should not be enough to scratch the regeneration stone. However, Ringies recalls Zeke's words, that there is no way to know the outcome without trying. He only met Zeke today, and although it may seem strange, Zeke believed in Ringies, so Ringies decides to believe in himself as well. When Ringies used a sword in the past, his source power never flowed this freely through his body. Gathering his resolve, Ringies thrusts the spear forward with all his strength. Before Retin and his companions can even see whether it worked, they burst into loud laughter, claiming that they already warned him that changing weapons would not make a difference. But this time, it is different. Ringies realizes that the spear feels as though it has been part of his body from the very beginning. He continues thrusting the spear forward, shocking Retin and his group of bullies, and astonishing even the instructors. It turns out that Ringies is not merely scratching the stone, he is breaking straight through the stone. Witnessing this, Zeke begins clapping and congratulates Ringies. Still dazed, Ringies asks what he just did, and in the next moment, the instructor announces that Ringies has passed the examination. Confused at first, Ringies struggles to process the words, until Zeke rushes forward and hugs him like a close friend, happily confirming that he succeeded just as Zeke expected. Realizing the truth, Ringies is overwhelmed with joy, bursting into tears as he hugs Zeke back and shouts that he truly passed. Retin and his friends grow anxious and frustrated upon seeing this, insisting that it must have been nothing more than coincidence. The instructor then loudly concludes the examination and announces the beginning of the entrance ceremony. Hearing this, Zeke is once again confused, surprised that it is already time for the ceremony, and asks Ringies whether that is all for the test. Ringies confirms this, adding that there may be additional tests after they officially enter. With mixed thoughts, Zeke asks what those tests might involve, and Ringies explains that the leadership of the Eldragon family will first deliver congratulatory speeches. At that moment, a group of soldiers arrives, among them a man emitting the most terrifying aura of all. Noticing this, Zeke asks about the gloomy-looking man, which immediately makes Ringies pale with fear. Ringies hurriedly tells Zeke that the man is the head of the Eldragon family. Hearing this, Zeke openly complains that he does not like the man's face and remarks that he should be more cheerful, saying that even ice would feel warmer than that expression. The moment Zeke says this, Ringies quickly covers Zeke's mouth, trembling as he desperately tells him to stay quiet. After being urged repeatedly, Zeke agrees to remain silent, though he continues glaring at the family head. As Zeke observes, he evaluates the current strength of the Eldragon family, noting the presence of several 7-star practitioners and a considerable number of 6-star warriors. He acknowledges that it is an impressive force. His attention then returns to the current family head, Balza Eldragon. Zeke never imagined that Balza would be an 8-star level practitioner. Even 1,000 years ago, there were fewer than a dozen 8-star warriors in the entire world. Though Zeke does not fully understand this era, he still finds that he strongly dislikes Balza, especially considering that Balza is his biological father. Soon after, the instructor announces that Balza will deliver a speech. Balza steps forward, releasing his aura as he instructs the students to strive to become the best soldiers of the Eldragon family. After finishing his words, Balza releases his chi toward the students, making it difficult for them to breathe. Everyone struggles under the pressure, including Ringies, while Zeke remains unaffected. The overwhelming force presses down on the crowd as Zeke stares at Balza, sensing a deep and unfamiliar resentment within himself. Zeke does not know why, but he truly cannot bring himself to like Balza at all. After Balza leaves, a golden-haired warrior steps forward with a cheerful laugh, commenting that Balza's speech was brief. He then tells the students that the family head has high expectations for them. Zeke glares at the golden-haired man, wondering who he is. The man continues, saying he will leave the stiff formalities to others and encourages everyone to pursue power with determination. Though Zeke does not fully understand him, he feels relieved that the atmosphere has lightened. The golden-haired warrior jokes with the instructor, saying that someone who worries too much will go bald, prompting a response. The previously tense students gradually return to their normal state. Finally, the instructor announces that dormitory assignments will now be revealed and instructs students to move promptly when their names are called. Hearing this, Zeke asks Ringies whether they will be assigned together. Ringies explains that there are 4 dragons' nests, and students are divided among the east, west, south, and north halls. Zeke understands and soon hears his name called. He stands up, bids Ringies farewell, and receives a map to his assigned room before heading to the East Hall of the Dragon's Nest. However, after 1,000 years, the layout has changed significantly, and Zeke soon finds himself lost. After wandering for a while, he finally locates his room, realizing that he arrived late and that his roommate is likely already inside. Zeke opens the door and apologizes for being late, introducing himself and stating that they will be sharing the room from now on. The one who turns out to be Zeke's roommate is none other than Ringies. Zeke smiles and comments that it seems they truly share quite a connection. Ringies agrees, admitting that he had been feeling anxious about being alone, so this arrangement is a relief. Sitting down on the bed, Zeke asks if there are no more plans for the day. Ringies confirms that this is correct and informs Zeke that training will begin immediately starting tomorrow. Zeke responds in confusion, saying, "That's right." Hearing this, Ringies realizes that Zeke was not paying attention to what the instructor had said earlier. Zeke gives a thumbs up and casually brags that he was not listening at all. Ringies replies that this is not something to brag about. Ringies then continues, saying that they should go to sleep early because training starts right away the next day. Zeke reflects that he originally planned to escape from that boring household and go on a journey. However, after witnessing the regeneration stone and the medicine, along with many other interesting things during the entrance examination, a lot has changed. To understand how the world has evolved over the past 1,000 years, Zeke concludes that staying with the Eldragon family for a while may not be such a bad idea. After 1 month passes, all the students are undergoing physical training while carrying heavy weights. Many of them are crying as they struggle under the burden. The instructor motivates them by explaining that the dragon's breath he taught them is a powerful breathing technique created by the 15th head of the Eldragon family. Because of this, all students must master it perfectly so they can use it in any situation. Even Ringies is pushing himself to his limits, sweating heavily as he continues holding the weights. The instructor then notices that some students have already mastered Dragon's Breath. Among them is Likia, whose source power is slightly overflowing, proving that she is close to reaching the 2-star level. At the same time, the instructor turns his gaze toward Zeke, confused by what he is witnessing. Zeke is not only holding the assigned weight with ease, but is also lifting large rocks effortlessly. The instructor thinks to himself that Zeke must certainly belong to the head's bloodline, yet it makes no sense. Zeke should have had no instructors and no prior training, and still he performs so well. Meanwhile, Zeke himself is surprised to realize that his breathing technique, Dragon King's Breath, has been refined and passed down as Dragon's Breath. Breathing techniques are methods of absorbing atmospheric source power into the body and circulating it to strengthen one's own source power. What determines their efficiency is the user's skill and ingenuity. For this reason, prestigious families develop their own unique methods, and once perfected, these techniques are guarded as closely held secrets. Dragon's Breath is certainly safe and easy to master, but because it can only be used while resting, Zeke finds it unnecessary for himself. Gilfa's Eldragon's secret technique, Dragon King's Breath, is the only breathing method that allows manipulation of source power without disrupting breathing, even while moving. Its effects are tremendous, but very few people could inherit it due to its extreme difficulty. That is why the technique was deliberately simplified, allowing everyone to use it and thereby increase the overall strength of the family. Zeke is deeply moved by this realization, as he never imagined that his technique would survive into the future in such a transformed state. He begins to wonder whether other martial arts have also changed over the past 1,000 years. The thought excites him, and he cannot wait to find out. All the while, Leica silently watches Zeke from a distance. Eventually, lunchtime arrives. Most of the students are so exhausted that they barely have the strength to hold their spoons. Yet they all glare at Zeke, who is eating his meal without any trouble. While eating, Zeke asks Ringies what is wrong and why he seems so down. He then tells Ringies that he will never gain strength if he does not eat properly. Ringies asks how Zeke can still be so energetic, commenting that Zeke's stamina is abnormal. Zeke replies that it is not his stamina that is strange, but rather that everyone else lacks stamina, and that they need to eat more and train harder. Zeke then offers a portion of his food to Ringies. Nervously, Ringies declines, replying that he will eat on his own. Zeke then looks toward Retin, who is sitting nearby and eating, and thinks that some people are clearly well-trained. Suddenly, Laika approaches Zeke and compliments him, saying that he is amazing. Zeke looks at her and asks who she is. Hearing this, Ringies and whispers to Zeke, asking if he truly does not know her. Ringies then reveals that she is the daughter of the family head. Zeke responds that he does not know her at all. Ringies continues whispering, saying that it cannot be true, and explains that she is one of the candidates to become the next head of the Eldragon family. Ringies is completely shocked and quickly tells Zeke that she is not someone they should normally be speaking to so casually. Hearing this, Zeke calmly reveals that he is also the head's son, although illegitimate. Ringies becomes extremely confused upon hearing this, and Laika asks if it is truly true that Zeke is the head's illegitimate child. Zeke responds by asking why he would lie about something like that. Laika then asks how Zeke was strong enough to shatter the regeneration stone with his bare hands, stating that there is no way a mere illegitimate child with no backing could achieve such a feat. While continuing to eat, Zeke casually replies that it is simply because he is who he is, then tells Ringies to stop spacing out and focus on eating. Laika suddenly smiles brightly, claiming that Zeke is truly interesting. She then sits beside him and boldly suggests that Zeke should serve under her. Confused, Zeke asks what she means by that. So Laika explains that she is asking him to become her subordinate. She says that she would provide support to an illegitimate child who needs allies, meaning that she would use his strength to help herself become the family head. She also promises that she would treat him well after she assumes the position. Hearing this, Zeke immediately declines. This causes Laika to ask for his reason, and she then releases her energy, questioning whether Zeke is aiming for the position of family head himself. Zeke observes Laika and realizes that she is on the verge of reaching the 2-star level, already able to emit aura outside her body. Considering her age, he finds her impressive. However, he tells her to do whatever she wants, as he has no interest in becoming the head or involving himself in family politics. Zeke genuinely has no interest in family matters. Hearing this response, Laika asks why he still refuses to join her. This angers Zeke, and he presses his knife into the table near her hand while releasing his aura, declaring that he will never serve under anyone because he is the strongest. Laika is deeply shocked, realizing that she has been completely overwhelmed by Zeke's presence. Ringies becomes terrified upon seeing Laika's reaction and hurriedly asks them both to calm down. However, Laika is now furious and decides to force Zeke into submission, declaring that she will fight him. Ringies starts trembling in fear upon hearing this. Zeke, meanwhile, calmly continues eating and looks at her. The scene then shifts to the hallway, where students are gathering and heading toward the training grounds. Word has spread that a duel involving the younger generation is about to take place, and the challenger is Laika from the Typhoon family. Although the students do not know the exact reason, none of them want to miss it. As they arrive at the training grounds to spectate, many of them wonder who Zeke is, as they have never seen him before. Meanwhile, Zeke comments that the situation has become quite serious. Ringies stammers nervously, asking Zeke if he is truly fine, given that his opponent is Laika. Zeke responds that Ringies claims not to know her, and more importantly, he asks why Ringies suddenly switched to formal speech. Ringies, visibly shaken, replies that of course he would speak formally, since Zeke is the head son. Zeke and tells Ringies to do whatever he likes. More urgently, Ringies pleads with Zeke to reconsider, explaining that his opponent is Laika, the daughter of the current head, Balza. She also inherits the blood of the Typhoon family, one of the great families that support the Eldragon house. On top of that, she is a prodigy who mastered all forms of the Typhoon family's hereditary lightning great sword techniques at the age of 7, just like Balza's other highly talented children. Hearing all of this, Zeke apologizes and says that he understands none of it except that she is the current head's daughter, and everything else is new information to him. Ringies becomes even more anxious and asks why that is. Zeke replies that Ringies should not ask him, and that not knowing simply makes things more enjoyable. Zeke looks genuinely pleased and comments that this is very exciting. This only worries Ringies further, as he insists that no matter how strong Master Zeke may be, Laika is at a serious disadvantage, and he asks why Zeke would still accept the challenge. Zeke replies that when someone challenges him to a fight, he does not run away, especially since she already seems ready. standing across from them. Laika grips her sword and releases her white aura, coldly asking whether their idle chatter is finally over. Ringies begins trembling in fear upon hearing this, and Zeke calmly replies to Laika that he is ready. Ringies quickly runs off, shouting to Zeke to be careful. Zeke comments that it really depends on Laika, then turns to her and asks why she is so determined to challenge him. Standing firmly, Laika responds that she intends to become the head of the family, and to do so, she must make Zeke submit and join her. Zeke questions what she means and how that relates to her own position. Laika, confused, asks if he truly does not understand his own family's situation, wondering if it is because he is an illegitimate child. Since Zeke is actually the founder reincarnated, he replies that he might have known if she had asked him directly. Laika decides to explain. She tells Zeke to pay attention. Including both of them, there are 5 candidates to become the next head. Everyone except Zeke is aligned with one of the 4 branch families of the Eldragon lineage. Which branch produces the next head is critical, so all the candidates are gathered at the dragon's nest, representing their respective families. To become the next head, Laika needs sufficient power to stand against her older brothers. Hearing this, Zeke concludes that it is essentially a clash among the 4 branches, and he finds it very complicated, leaving him uncertain about the intricacies. Laika continues, asserting that as a candidate for the next head, she must solidify her position, and that is why she intends to defeat Zeke right here. She charges toward him, swinging her massive training greatsword, but Zeke easily dodges her attack. She follows up with a flurry of strikes, yet he evades them effortlessly once again. She shouts in frustration that he let her attacks escape. The spectators are stunned, witnessing her incredible speed and control over such a large weapon. Not only is her handling precise, but the pace of her attacks keeps increasing. The students watching quickly realize the true power of a branch heir, the immense strength of the head's children. Many believe it is only a matter of time before the duel is decided in her favor. Meanwhile, Laika grows increasingly frustrated, unable to land a single hit, while Zeke continues to dodge all her swings with ease. Ringies finds the scene astonishing. As he maneuvers, Zeke comments that this is a martial art he has never encountered before, and that such speed is not expected from a mere 1-star level practitioner. Hearing this, Laika shouts at him to be quiet and focus on the duel. Zeke calmly channels his energy into his fist, replying to Laika that he is indeed focused, which is precisely why he is able to strike directly at her midsection with such precision. Zeke lands a hit on her, causing Laika to fall to the ground, but the match is far from over. The spectators are utterly amazed, witnessing her attacks consistently miss. They all begin to wonder about Zeke's true identity. Struggling with intense pain, Laika demands to know why her attacks cannot connect, noting that for a 1-star, she is exceptionally fast. Zeke calmly replies that while Laika is indeed faster than any 1-star he has encountered, she is still just a 1-star. Laika glares at him and points out that he is also a 1-star, so he should not be able to keep up with her movements at all. Zeke responds, explaining simply that by observing breathing, eye movements, and subtle muscle shifts, anyone can anticipate most actions, and the rest comes with experience. Enraged, Laika rises to her feet, shouting that he is being ridiculous, and launches another attack. Zeke easily dodges and lands another punch, telling her that he can already predict her movements. The impact sends her flying into the wall, leaving the spectators stunned, wondering if she might actually lose. Ringies rushes forward, excitedly complimenting Zeke on his apparent victory, but Zeke interrupts, informing him that the fight is far from over. Laika had focused all her source power at her core to absorb his blow. Zeke praises her strength, saying she is truly formidable. Ringies, confused, watches as the dust settles, revealing Laika struggling to stand. He urges her to withdraw, but Zeke tells him to step back, warning that he will not be responsible if Ringies gets caught up in the fight. Zeke then reveals that Laika already had traces of a 2-star level, and now she has fully awakened it. The spectators immediately recognize the unmistakable white aura, the mark of a 2-star. At this level, one can emit source power outside their body, and in martial arts, this externalized energy is called aura. Standing there, Laika thanks Zeke, acknowledging that it was because of him that she reached the 2-star level. She immediately launches a new attack, claiming he has no chance of winning. Zeke smirks again, dodging the strike and commenting on her incredible speed. This time, however, the attack leaves a faint mark on him, surprising him, as he thought he had completely evaded it. Laika taunts, asking if he can see now, and declares that this is her ability. With her 2-star aura fully activated, she demonstrates the true Thunder Greatsword technique, unleashing an immense aura aligned with lightning. Zeke, astonished, notes that he is witnessing a martial art he has never encountered before and considers it the perfect opportunity to learn and observe. Even without physically touching Zeke, Laika is able to launch lightning at him, which surprises him greatly. He steps back, asking her to wait and inquiring what this is. With a pleased and amused expression, Zeke comments on the absurdity of her being able to manipulate lightning. Laika, undeterred, continues her assault, remarking that for someone saying that, he looks like he is thoroughly enjoying himself. She then unleashes a technique called Lightning Net. Zeke acknowledges that this is far beyond what he faced before, even for him. This lightning is now a significant challenge. The spectators, astonished, whisper among themselves, wondering what kind of battle this has become. Just the addition of 1 star has completely transformed the fight. Ringies grows extremely worried about Zeke. Observing carefully, Zeke realizes that the movements themselves are actually simple and unchanged from before, but the moment Laika reached 2-star level and gained her aura, the power of her lightning greatsword technique exploded. Zeke had thought she was fast before, but now she is even faster. More importantly, the nature of her lightning baffles him. Being able to cloak oneself in lightning is something he could theoretically counterattack, but he is intensely curious about the true essence of her power. The prospect of unraveling it makes him smile. Seeing his calm demeanor, Laika is impressed but also determined to wipe that smile off his face. Zeke lands on the ground, keeping his distance, but Laika uses her swift thunder technique and charges at him. He barely dodges, noting that the attack is like a lightning bolt, but the assault isn't over. He is slammed into the wall, sending dust flying everywhere. Ringies jumps from the 1st floor, while other students try to stop him. Surprisingly, Zeke is still unharmed. Laika then uses her lightning flash technique, which Zeke takes head-on. Ringies rushes forward, pleading with Laika to stop, fearing that any more attacks could kill Zeke. Laika refuses, arguing that stopping now would only insult Zeke. Zeke, once again, rises without counterattacking. Ringies shouts at him, begging him to surrender, and Laika adds her own urging, telling him to submit, noting that he is already in a terrible state. Zeke smiles at her words, which piques Laika's interest. She then manifests her aura, acknowledging that even as an illegitimate child, he is still a proud Eldragon. Determined to finish the battle, she unleashes her lightning greatsword technique, first secret art, Heaven's Thunder, and attacks with full force. Zeke takes the blow head-on without dodging, causing Ringies to panic as he sees Zeke fall unconscious. Laika drives her sword into the ground, apologizing to Ringies and declaring the match over. She is stunned when Zeke, using lightning, rises to his feet again. Shocked, she asks how he has a lightning aura. Zeke smiles, savoring the sensation of the aura himself, and admits to Laika that he doesn't fully understand it either. She is left even more bewildered as Zeke reveals that he had deliberately endured her attacks to analyze her power, and in the process, somehow became capable of using it himself. While receiving Laika's mysterious lightning attacks, Zeke continued using his breathing technique, Dragon King's Breath. Suddenly, the Dragon King's Breath reacted to her lightning aura, causing lightning to accumulate inside him. Before he realized it, he could manipulate the lightning, although he didn't fully understand the exact principle behind it. Zeke complimented Laika, noting that she must have a unique constitution. Then he realized that considering her greatsword technique is part of her family's hereditary martial arts, he wondered if her entire clan might possess a similar, unique constitution. Amazed to discover that her source power itself carried lightning properties, Zeke acknowledged that her training had been excellent. More importantly, thanks to Laika, Zeke had also reached the 2-star level. Zeke declared that the match was not over yet. Laika launched another attack, but he dodged it with lightning-like speed. After dodging, however, he momentarily struggled to maintain balance. With the gain in source power, all of his muscles and nerves strengthened, demonstrating his incredible unique constitution, which slightly disrupted his senses. Standing there, lightning coursing around him, Zeke remarked that he needed some time to adjust. Rengiz watched in awe, barely able to keep up with the battle between the next head candidates. He even wondered if he was imagining things because Lyca's lightning slashes were no longer connecting with Zeke. Frustrated, Lyca shouted that Zeke was mocking her. Zeke calmly replied that he wasn't mocking her at all and assured her that he properly considered her a serious threat. Both of them stepped back, and Zeke stretched his body, thinking it was time to end the match. He announced that he would create a new technique, leaving Lyca confused. As he contemplated a name, maybe first form or special form, Lyca wondered if he had secretly received combat training and questioned which family might have taught him, as it seemed impossible for any family to develop a new technique so easily. Zeke charged forward, noticing her distraction, and launched the attack. Dragon Destruction Combat Arts, Special Form, Lightning Peak. Lyca was struck and fell to the ground, giving Zeke the victory. Standing there with a smile, Zeke commented that it had been an interesting fight. Lyca, lying on the ground, was shocked at her loss but tried to rise, determined to become the family head. To achieve that, she needed to defeat her older brothers, and winning all matches was essential. She could not afford to lose. Observing her resolve, Zeke complimented her strength, surprising Lyca. He told her that learning new things was truly enjoyable and that this had been an extremely meaningful experience. Extending his hand, he added that it would be boring if this were the only time they fought, smiling as he suggested they spar again. Lyca's expression brightened, pleased by his words. Several hours later, inside the rift, Balza is fighting while surrounded by monsters, but they are nothing more than mere fodder to him. Balza's dragon pressure alone is enough to terrify the monsters and force them to stop. He then draws his sword and uses the first form of the Dragon Destruction Combat Arts, Genesis, defeating all the monsters in a single strike. Afterward, Balza sheaths his sword as his underlings take care of the remaining creatures. At that moment, one of the soldiers approaches Balza to report that Lyca has reached the 2-star level, but to Balza, it is nothing worth mentioning, even though reaching the 2-star level at her age could be considered a remarkable achievement. The soldier further informs him that, with Lyca's talent, by the time she graduates from Dragon's Nest, she will be at least at the 5-star level. However, talent does not impress Balza, so he tells the soldier to inform him only when she becomes useful and orders him to leave if he came to report something this trivial. As Balza begins to walk away, the soldier hurriedly informs him about Lyca's defeat. Balza is surprised to learn that she was defeated by Zeke, who is the same age as Lyca. He recalls Zeke's mother, who was also exceptionally talented in combat, yet had already passed away by the time Zeke was born. Balza then questions the soldier about who trained Zeke, but the soldier reveals that Zeke defeated Lyca without being taught by anyone and reached the 2-star level through his own power. Finding this intriguing, Balza orders the soldier to begin the first trial. The soldier is shocked and claims it is far too soon, as the students have only been learning combat for about a month, and most of them have not even reached the 1-star level yet. However, this does not matter to Balza, who believes that whether one has learned combat or not, death comes equally, and only the strong survive. Those who cannot overcome even the first trial, regardless of their star level, are not qualified to become Eldragons. Despite his reluctance, the soldier accepts the order. Balza then commands him to summon Freya. Balza finds Zeke's ability to defeat Lyca through his own power extremely fascinating. He decides to assign Freya to oversee the content and supervision of the trial and instructs her to closely monitor everything during its execution. Zeke continues to capture Balza's interest. The next day, all the students are practicing at the training grounds. Rengiz is also giving it his all, but everyone is stunned when they see Zeke training while holding numerous rocks and performing wall sits. Similar to Dragon's Breath, this is a technique created by the 15th head. Although it is referred to as a combat art, it is essentially a body enhancement technique, carefully designed so that even children can master it easily. Rengiz interrupts Zeke's thoughts by asking a strange question, wondering if he is not going to train. Even though Zeke is clearly training, Rengiz quickly corrects himself, explaining that he meant training in Strike Dragon combat arts. Rengiz is shocked to discover that Zeke has already mastered it, even though he learned it only moments ago. Changing the subject, Zeke points out that Rengiz's source power flow is incorrect. He then puts down the rocks, asks Rengiz to turn around, and uses dragon arts to demonstrate the correct flow. Ringies thanks him and, in amazement, comments that Zeke has truly mastered it. This surprises Zeke, as he realizes that Ringies had been doubting him. Ringies nervously apologizes, insisting that he did not mean it that way. He explains that this is the first time anyone other than his father has taught him, which makes him overly cautious. Ringies then reveals that the reason he said that earlier was because he knew Zeke was already strong enough to defeat Leica, so he assumed Strike Dragon combat arts might feel simple or boring to him. Zeke denies this and explains that he is impressed by the stability of Strike Dragon combat arts. He mentions that Dragon Destruction combat arts were unpopular among his sons, who found them too complex and difficult. While Dragon Destruction combat arts are indeed complicated, they possess overwhelming power. The techniques progress from the first form to the second, third, and fourth forms, and beyond that, a special form born from the battle with Leica exists, along with a final form that possesses immense destructive power and once slew a divine dragon. Zeke also grows curious about how dragon techniques are currently handled, wondering if they have been modified as well. The thought excites him. Since he has already finished learning Strike Dragon combat arts, he continues training his body as usual. Zeke advises Ringies that everyone learns at their own pace. Hearing this, Ringies suddenly begs Zeke to train him, asking him to instruct him just like he did earlier. Although embarrassed, Ringies admits that his desire to grow stronger is genuine. Zeke agrees to teach him, which leaves Ringies confused as he asks if that is truly alright. Zeke wonders why Ringies reacts that way, considering he was the one who asked. While they are chatting, Leica approaches and also asks Zeke to train her. Ringies is surprised by this and asks if she really has no problem requesting Zeke's help. Although embarrassed, Leica admits that she once believed no one her age could defeat her, especially since she is a candidate for the next head. However, during their battle the previous day, Zeke completely overwhelmed her, manifested a lightning aura, and wielded it more effectively than she could. As a result, her pride was utterly shattered. Zeke asks Ringies if the situation is his fault, but Leica interrupts, stating that she wants to grow strong enough to defeat Zeke's older brothers, and even Zeke himself. That is why she wants Zeke to train her. She asks worriedly if that is truly alright, since Zeke is also a candidate for head, which technically makes him her enemy. This reminds Ringies that Zeke is indeed a head candidate as well. Even though Zeke is illegitimate, he is still the head's son. Zeke appears to be thinking deeply before informing Leica that he will train her, but he asks whether her body is truly fine, as those injuries should have left her immobile for an entire month. Leica replies that she used a healing potion, so there is no problem, and comments that Zeke worries about strange things. Zeke whispers to Ringies about how incredibly effective the medicine must be, and Ringies whispers back that if she is referring to the healing potion from the entrance exam, that one does not have such power. However, since she is Leica, she must have used proper medicine. Zeke remarks that it truly is an amazing era, as without those healing potions, Leica would have been unable to move for a month. This embarrasses Leica, and she quickly changes the subject by asking if he will really train her even though he also needs time for his own training. Zeke happily agrees to teach her, stating that he will not refuse young people with ambition. This leaves both Leica and Ringies confused, since Zeke is the same age as them. Zeke then changes the topic, asking if Leica is truly fine with being trained by the very person who defeated her. Leica responds that she does not care about that, as she cannot afford to be picky. If she wants to grow stronger and become the next head, she is willing to do anything. Zeke recalls that she previously said the same thing about becoming head and asks why she is so fixated on that goal. Leica explains that if she does not become the head, her only remaining option is marriage, a political marriage. At best, it would be with one of her cousins, and at worst, she would be forced to marry a complete stranger. This revelation makes Zeke extremely angry, but Leica insists that this is considered normal within the Eldragon, where bloodlines are highly valued, especially among the 4 branches whose source power is special. There are many ways to make use of that power, yet Zeke remains furious about the disturbing customs that still exist in this era. Zeke becomes determined to destroy such terrible traditions. At that moment, the teachers arrive, startling everyone as they turn around to hear the announcement. The professors inform the students that a new instructor has taken time out of her busy schedule to come and teach them. As the professor is about to introduce Freya, she suddenly approaches Leica, which terrifies her and causes her to immediately stumble backward. Freya compliments Leica's movements, while Ringies clings to Zeke in fear. Zeke senses no presence at all, prompting Ringies to ask about Freya. The professor then introduces her as their new instructor, Freya Fiwinkik of the Black Dragon Group. Freya greets everyone cheerfully and begins speaking with Zeke. But she is confused when she notices that he is not surprised by her appearance. Zeke comments that she is nothing particularly surprising, though he does note that she possesses an interesting technique. Seeing Zeke's eyes, Freya immediately understands why the head has taken such an interest in him. Zeke is impressed by her remarkable stealth technique, but more than that, he is curious about her martial arts. From what he can tell, Freya's source power is concentrated in her lower body, yet the flow pattern is something he has never seen before. He wonders if that is the reason there is no sound of footsteps even though she is wearing heels. This only heightens Zeke's excitement as he wonders what kind of martial arts she uses. Freya then addresses the students, announcing that she will be their new instructor. The students are pleased, realizing that a truly skilled expert has come to teach them. The professor adds that Freya is a 6-star practitioner belonging to the Black Dragon group and instructs the students to learn as much as they can from her. This amazes the students even further, though Laika does not seem pleased at all. Freya states that she will teach everyone, but only if they pass her test. The students are shocked by the sudden announcement. Freya reassures them not to worry, explaining that it is an easy test. All they need to do is take the crystal orb and spend a month on Poison Dragon Mountain. Ringies is extremely shocked upon hearing about the mountain, while Zeke finds the name deeply nostalgic. Poison Dragon Mountain is a region inhabited by a wide variety of poisonous creatures, where even a single blade of grass brushing against one's skin can be fatal for ordinary people. It is an extremely dangerous place. Zeke often used this mountain for training in his previous life, so he believes it is far too early for students who have not even reached the 1-star level. Freya continues explaining that if the crystal orb breaks during the test, or if they lose it, they will be disqualified immediately. The students are shocked and ask what will happen if they are disqualified. Freya calmly replies that they will be expelled. As for the poison, she explains that if they properly use the breathing technique known as Dragon's Breath, they should be able to endure it. As long as they do not lose the crystal orb, there should be no major problem. Laika asks Freya about the monsters, and in response, Freya tells them to simply defeat the monsters. She adds that if they cannot defeat the monsters, they will not be able to survive in the forest for a month. The students are terrified, as they believe this to be impossible, but Freya tells them not to worry. She explains that they have a full 5 days before the test, and during that time, they will choose and learn one of the Eldragon family's basic weapon arts. With those skills, fighting monsters will be much easier. However, Freya states that if they cannot master the weapon arts within 5 days, she will not be responsible for what happens afterward. Sweating in fear, one of the students asks whether the instructors will help them if things become dangerous. Freya coldly responds that this is Eldragon, a place where only the strong survive and the weak are weeded out. If the students cannot win, she claims it would be better for them to sleep peacefully among the monsters in a bed of poison. Hearing this, Zeke begins to wonder whether this Eldragon is different from the one he once knew, as the Eldragon he remembered cared deeply for its children. After finishing her explanation, Freya decides to distribute martial arts manuals for each weapon. Each student must come forward and receive the book corresponding to their chosen weapon. While most students quickly select their manuals, Ringies struggles to make a decision. Zeke suggests that he choose the spear manual, since Ringies used a spear during the entrance exam. This makes Ringies happy, and he sincerely thanks Zeke. Laika prepares to select the greatsword manual, even though she already possesses a lightning greatsword technique. But Zeke stops her and recommends that she choose the axe arts instead. Laika asks for the reason, but Zeke simply explains that axe arts will help supplement what she is currently lacking. After that, Zeke leaves, happily thinking about selecting a certain manual for himself. Once everyone has received their manuals, Freya instructs the students to memorize them as if their lives depend on it. Otherwise, she warns, they will meet a miserable end. However, Freya neglects to mention that during the actual test, the seniors from the East Hall will be attempting to steal their crystal orbs. This revelation terrifies Ringies, while Zeke feels excited. Freya continues explaining that they will be taking the test alongside 10-year-old upperclassmen, whose objective is to steal their crystal orbs. Although the seniors are stronger, the younger students have greater numbers, which is an advantage. Additionally, Poison Dragon Mountain is vast, so there is a chance they may not even encounter the seniors. Freya then waves a white handkerchief and wishes them good luck, though the students feel anything but reassured. All the 10-year-old upperclassmen are at least at the 1-star level, and even Laika would struggle if attacked by a large group. As a result, most of the younger students would not survive such an encounter. Zeke agrees with this assessment and advises everyone to move in groups if they cannot manage alone. He explains that forming parties to prepare for encounters with upperclassmen is not forbidden, and when it comes to monster hunting, more help is always better. Hearing this, Ringies asks what Zeke plans to do. Zeke replies that he intends to enjoy the test alone, though both Laika and Ringies believe this to be impossible even for him. Ignoring their concerns, Zeke happily leaves to begin his training. 5 days later, all the students assemble at the entrance of the forest, and Freya appears before them. Ringies and Laika are nervous as the time for the test draws near. Ringies, feeling anxious, asks Laika whether it is really alright for someone like him to group up with her, especially when there are other students from proper noble families in the class. Ringies is a commoner and has not even reached a single star. Celine and Raymond comment that they are in the same position as Laika and express that they are happy to have the opportunity to team up with her. However, Laika states that it does not matter to her whether her group members are nobles or commoners. She explains that she invited them because she recognizes their abilities. This greatly motivates Ringies, and he resolves to do his best so that he does not become a burden. Raymond and Celine also decide to give their best effort. Laika then asks Zeke if he will be alright on his own. Without showing even a trace of fear, Zeke confirms that he will be fine and says that he cannot wait for the test to begin. This prompts Celine and Raymond to comment on the head's bloodline, as they have been extremely nervous the entire time. Laika tells them not to lump her together with Zeke, explaining that she is also nervous. However, when it comes to Zeke, there is no reason for him to feel anxious. He believes that since Laika and other promising students are gathered together, everything will turn out fine. Although there are many reasons to be nervous, Zeke is an exception. He is impressed by how Laika successfully gathered the most promising students in the class. Zeke believes the test will be easy for them, though Ringies feels otherwise. After all the students have gathered, Freya arrives and explains that some students may have decided to travel with friends because they could not fully master weapon arts, which she considers a good choice. Freya explains that the test requires them to spend an entire month on Poison Dragon Mountain without leaving, while keeping possession of a crystal orb. As long as they retain a crystal orb, they will pass the test. Since all the crystal orbs are identical, if they lose one, they can simply obtain another. Freya also instructs them that after they enter the mountain and settle in, the upperclassmen will follow and attempt to steal their crystal orbs. Hearing this, the upperclassmen begin mocking the underclassmen, believing the test will be easy since most of them have not even reached the 1-star level. Freya finishes her explanation and officially begins the test. The underclassmen rush toward the forest, and while running, Laika tells Zeke to absolutely survive. She then enters the forest with her party, leaving Zeke standing behind. As Zeke remains standing there, waving at Laika and the others, Freya reminds him that he also needs to enter the forest. Zeke apologizes, admitting that he got a little carried away, which Freya finds strange. As Zeke starts walking, he casually remarks that he is not nervous at all. Hearing this, Freya thinks of him as a very unusual child. As night falls, one of the professors asks Freya whether everything will be alright, expressing concern that the test may be too early for the new students. Another instructor agrees, pointing out that the underclassmen have only learned the bare minimum and lack real combat experience, meaning that not many of them will pass. Freya reassures them, explaining that although Poison Dragon Mountain is home to many poisonous creatures, the monsters themselves are not particularly impressive in either number or quality. Most of them are only at the 1 to 2-star level, which is why she believes the students will be fine. However, she quietly reveals her inner thoughts about releasing something later, but since the professors do not hear it, she gets away with it. Freya then orders the upperclassmen to enter the forest. They head in with arrogant smirks, eager to hunt down the underclassmen. As she adjusts her hair, Freya wonders how many of the younger students will survive. The upperclassmen soon notice Zeke standing in the middle of the path and immediately target him. One of the upperclassmen girls attacks Zeke with a bow, but to everyone's shock, Zeke catches the arrow with his bare hand and breaks it, calmly stating that he has been waiting for them. The upperclassmen are left completely stunned by what they witness as Zeke charges toward them. While the day is still bright, Celine fights a monster with all her strength, but she is nearly struck when Raymond steps in, shields her, and defeats the monster. Meanwhile, Ringies also takes down a monster, and upon seeing their progress, Laika praises their efforts, noting that she herself has defeated even more monsters than they have. In response, Celine and Raymond compliment her, and Laika proudly boasts that as a 2-star, this is nothing for her. It has been a week since the test began, and Celine and Raymond have now reached the 1-star level, something they both believe is thanks entirely to Laika's guidance. Ringies, however, feels discouraged because he has not yet reached the 1-star level, while the others are advancing quickly. Noticing his mood, Raymond and Celine reassure Ringies, telling him that he is already very strong and that they are certain he will reach 1 star soon. Their words give Ringies the courage to push himself harder. Laika then compliments Ringies as well, saying that defeating a tree frog without even having a star is impressive. She adds that since Ringies trained with Zeke before the test and refined his spear technique, he does not need to worry so much. As darkness begins to fall, Laika suggests returning to their base, explaining that it is dangerous to remain active at night. When they arrive at their base, Laika suddenly becomes alert and angry after spotting an upperclassman inside. The others immediately draw their weapons and form a defensive formation. The upperclassman appears to be a 2-star and remarks that he did not expect this base to belong to Laika. While pointing her great sword at him, Laika tells him to turn back, warning that he cannot defeat all 4 of them alone. However, it soon becomes clear that he is not alone, as 3 1-star upperclassmen emerge behind him. The upperclassman suggests that Laika surrender, claiming that even she would struggle while protecting weaker teammates. The 2-star upperclassman engages Laika in combat, while Celine, Raymond, and Ringies face the 3 1-star opponents. Laika instructs them to hold out until she defeats the 2-star enemy. The upperclassmen relentlessly attack Ringies, demanding that he hand over the crystal orb. As the pressure mounts, Ringies grows increasingly anxious, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, he recalls his training with Zeke, when he once asked how to fight opponents stronger than himself. Ringies had explained that he was unable to unlock the 1-star level and wanted to know what to do if a stronger enemy appeared. Zeke had told him that giving up was the obvious choice for a starless person like him when facing a 3 or 4-star opponent. However, Zeke also explained that defeating 1 or 2-star opponents might still be possible. Knowing that Ringies was referring to the test, Zeke pointed out that the monsters on Poison Dragon Mountain and the upperclassmen were mostly 1 or 2-star levels, meaning Ringies could defeat them. All he needed to do was exploit an opening. To find such an opening, Zeke advised Ringies to endure patiently until the opponent made a mistake. Ringies was surprised by this advice, though it made sense since he was facing a stronger enemy. Zeke warned that endurance was crucial, explaining that if Ringies could not endure, then defeating a stronger opponent would remain nothing more than a dream. Zeke believed Ringies could endure against a 2-star opponent, unless it was someone exceptional like Laika, who wielded lightning-based techniques. According to Zeke, what Ringies lacked most was confidence. He emphasized that believing in oneself is essential to becoming stronger. Zeke then advised Ringies not to overthink things. He did not need to calculate the power gap or actively search for openings. Instead, he only needed to wait calmly until an opening naturally appeared, and then thrust his spear straight into it. Back in the present battle, Ringies recalls Zeke's advice and focuses on enduring the upperclassman's attacks while waiting for an opening. The upperclassman grows increasingly frustrated and finally leaps into the air to strike, exposing a clear opening. The instant Ringies sees it, he thrusts his spear forward and defeats the upperclassman. At the same time, Laika overwhelms the 2-star opponent with her lightning. Since learning axe arts, she has been able to channel far more power into her greatsword than before, finally understanding why Zeke recommended axe arts to her. Laika defeats the upperclassman, who collapses to the ground from the blow. She then rushes toward her teammates, only to discover that they have already defeated their opponents. Ringies is overjoyed by their victory, and Celine and Raymond congratulate him on reaching the 1-star level. Laika is delighted to see that everyone has manifested a star, believing that they can now handle enemies of this level with confidence. She then begins to wonder about Zeke's situation. The scene finally shifts to the upperclassmen, who are fleeing in terror while crying out loudly and calling Zeke a monster. Zeke smiles and asks if there is no one left to play with him. Terrified, the upperclassmen run away from Zeke, wondering why he is hunting them even though it was originally their role to do so. One of the upperclassmen missteps, gets his legs tangled, and falls to the ground. Zeke approaches him, saying that he is getting tired of this game of tag, and then asks the upperclassman to fight him properly. Just witnessing this is enough to make the upperclassman lose consciousness. This makes Zeke feel deeply disappointed, as the upperclassmen are now completely defensive despite being aggressive at the beginning. After the upperclassmen disappear from sight, Zeke calls out to the person hiding nearby, asking them to come out and observe more closely. However, since the observer remains hidden, Zeke assumes that his actions are not considered a problem and decides to continue without holding back. Once Zeke leaves the area, the soldier finally reveals himself. He is shocked that Zeke not only defeated the upperclassman, but also sensed his presence. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the soldier decides to report this to Freya and exits the forest. Other professors also gather to give their reports. One of them states that 1 week into the test, approximately 30% of the 7-year-old class has already dropped out. However, He adds that the remaining students are gradually adapting, so he does not expect a significant increase in dropouts. Freya then asks about the situation involving the upperclassmen. The professors hesitate before informing her that the upperclassmen are retreating. This leaves Freya confused, as she knows there are no monsters on Poison Dragon Mountain capable of forcing the upperclassmen to flee. The soldier explains that the reason for their retreat is Zeke, who has been attacking them. Although the upperclassmen initially try to fight back, they are now all running away. The soldier then questions Zeke's personality, noting that he is cheerfully overwhelming the upperclassmen and actively hunting them, which is something entirely unprecedented. Another fighter agrees, stating that precisely because Zeke is the head son, his behavior is even more abnormal. He claims that Zeke has already surpassed the realm of a genius and is closer to a monster in nature. Freya adds that she also finds Zeke strange, as he deliberately chose to act alone and appeared unusually relaxed at the start of the test. As Freya reflects on this, one of the female soldiers hears the sound of a carriage approaching. A man arrives carrying a caged monster, as previously ordered by Freya, and asks where it should be placed. Freya tells him to leave it right there. The soldiers are shocked when they realize that she intends to release a 3-star level creature onto Poison Dragon Mountain, something the children clearly should not be able to handle. Freya reassures them with a smile, explaining that the creature has been specially adjusted to target only 2-star level individuals like Zeke and Laika, ensuring that ordinary students will not suffer serious harm. She then reveals that this was Balz's order. Freya expresses her desire to witness the abilities of the one who made the Eldragon soldiers label him a monster. Curious and excited, she wonders whether Zeke can handle this as well and orders the creature to be released at dawn. The next morning, while Laika and the others are exploring the forest, they sense something unusual. Feeling the energy in the air, Laika guesses that it belongs to a monster far larger than an angry boar. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and a tree nearly collapses onto them due to the impact. They all dodge just in time, but when the tree finally crashes down, they freeze in fear as a massive golem emerges before them. After effortlessly defeating a wave of low-ranking monsters, Zeke begins to feel bored. Lately, no one has been willing to challenge him, and even the instructors who were supposed to monitor the area have vanished. Suddenly, he senses a strange aura, one that clearly belongs to a 3-star level monster. That immediately confuses him. In his memories, there was never such a creature near Poison Dragon Mountain. He wonders if it might be an unknown monster that settled there sometime over the past 1,000 years. Zeke understands that a monster of this level is far beyond what the participating students can handle. Logically, the instructors should have eliminated it before the test even began. Realizing they are deliberately ignoring it, Zeke grows suspicious. He has no idea what they are planning, but for him, it presents the perfect opportunity for some excitement. With renewed interest, he stands and heads toward the direction of the 3-star creature. Meanwhile, Celine launches an attack on a massive golem, but it has no effect. Raymond follows up with his own strike, yet the result is the same. This time, Laika steps forward and unleashes her lightning flash skill, managing to injure the golem's arm a little. From that exchange, it becomes clear, without at least 2-star level power, defeating this golem is nearly impossible. Quickly assessing the situation, Laika orders everyone to retreat while she draws the monster's attention. However, her teammates refuse to abandon her. She bluntly tells them that they would only slow her down since they cannot significantly damage the golem. Even so, they stand their ground, determined to support her and create openings so her attacks can land properly. They believe that if Laika takes the lead, they still have a chance to win. Moved by their resolve, Laika accepts their support. The formation begins with Laika charging straight at the golem, while Raymond intercepts its counterattack. Celine and Ringies follow up with a coordinated strike, creating an opening. Seizing the moment, Laika unleashes her ultimate technique, Lightning Great Sword, Heaven's Thunder. The battlefield erupts in a blinding flash as the area fills with dust. When the smoke clears, Laika is left heavily exhausted from the immense strain of her attack. Seeing that everyone is still standing, the group assumes the battle is over and decides to return to base. But to their shock, the golem is still active. Sensing its movement, Laika reacts instantly. She throws Ringies out of the monster's attack range, but is caught herself in the process. Celine, Raymond, and Ringies panic as the golem restrains her. Ringies desperately attacks to free Laika, but his efforts prove ineffective. At that critical moment, a massive tree suddenly comes flying toward the golem, forcing it to release Laika. The team seizes the opportunity, rescues her, and retreats at once. Just then, Zeke arrives at the scene. A little earlier, as Zeke was making his way toward the 3-star monster, he suddenly sensed a surge of lightning aura. He immediately realized that Laika and her group had encountered the golem before he could arrive. Though his current body is far slower than it once was, in his prime, he could have crossed that distance in an instant. Laika's team is filled with promising young talents. But even so, facing a 3-star opponent is an entirely different matter. Zeke is unsure how long they can hold out. While running, he abruptly comes to a stop. Deciding to test a technique he recently learned, he grips a massive tree, channels his strength, and uproots it from the ground. With all his might, he hurls it toward the golem's direction. The move comes from the Nurturing Dragon Throwing Arts, part of the basic Eldragon combat manual distributed to children as preparation for their trials. Like the broader Nurturing Dragon combat arts, the manual does not focus on flashy battle techniques. Instead, it teaches fundamental movements and the proper flow of source power. Simple instructions, but perfectly suited for Zeke. In his previous life, he specialized as a long-range fighter, making the technique a natural fit. After launching the tree, Zeke rushes toward the battlefield and successfully rescues Laika and the others. Zeke studies the so-called golem with great interest. It clearly emits a presence, yet it contains no mana. The golem charges at him and throws a punch, but Zeke blocks it effortlessly. From the impact, he gauges its extreme hardness. With durability like this, ordinary attacks would barely scratch it. Only aura-clad strikes could gradually take it down. However, defeating it in such a conventional manner would be far too dull for him. The golem attacks again, and once more Zeke blocks with ease. He calmly instructs the others to retreat to a safe distance. Once they are clear, Zeke pushes the golem back and decides to test what lies within its structure. He merges his punch with the first form of the Dragon Destruction combat arts, Burst World. Rather than shattering the golem from the outside, he pours source power into its interior. By releasing Burst World from within, he destabilizes its core. In the next moment, the golem crumbles apart and collapses. 1 month later, at the main building of Eldragon Estate, Zeke is summoned by the Patriarch. The month-long test period concludes safely after the 3-star golem incident, with no further major events. At the beginning of the trial, the harsh environment of Poison Dragon Mountain reduced Zeke's 7-year-old class to only 30% of its original number. Yet enduring such extreme conditions pushed the survivors to their limits. As a result, most of those who remained achieved the remarkable milestone of reaching 1-star level. Shortly after the test ends, Zeke is called directly by the head of the Eldragon family. On the way to the Patriarch's chamber with Freya, Zeke casually asks what the family head wants from him. Freya responds clearly, her tone reflecting lingering frustration over his conduct during the trial. The upperclassmen's assignment had been to ambush lowerclassmen and seize their crystal orbs. Instead, Zeke, a lowerclassman, targeted the upperclassmen. Because of his actions, not a single upperclassman managed to collect a crystal orb, forcing them all to retake the test. When Zeke argues that his actions did not violate any explicit rules, Freya grows even more exasperated. She firmly advises him to correct his carefree attitude before standing before the family head. Zeke asks Freya why she warned him to watch his attitude. She replies bluntly that even though he is a child, the family head wouldn't show mercy and injure Zeke for crossing the line, and she refuses to let that happen under her supervision. Moments later, Freya knocks on the door and respectfully asks for permission to enter. After receiving approval, the two step inside. The family head immediately questions Zeke about why he attacked the upperclassmen. Instead of answering directly, Zeke calmly asks why he was not allowed to attack them. The official passing condition of the test was simple: survive 1 month on Poison Dragon Mountain while holding a crystal orb. There were no additional restrictions stated. From his perspective, he merely followed the rules as written. If certain actions were forbidden, they should have been clarified before the trial began. Freya is alarmed by his bold tone. The family head releases a tremendous aura that fills the room with overwhelming pressure, causing Freya to tense up in fear. She worries that Zeke may face severe consequences. Yet Zeke remains completely unaffected. He even tells the family head not to threaten him, as he finds it irritating. He then asks whether he was summoned over something so trivial. Getting to the point, the family head demands to know how Zeke accomplished everything. According to the reports, Zeke not only defeated multiple upperclassmen but also destroyed a golem. Moreover, he now stands there calmly, showing no signs of strain. For an illegitimate child, such power should be impossible. Zeke answers simply that there is no complicated reason. He is strong because he is himself. The family head narrows his eyes, remarking that Zeke's attitude is just as frivolous as reported. Nevertheless, he acknowledges Zeke's achievement in defeating the golem and decides to grant him a reward. Zeke may choose one item from the dragon treasury or receive access to the dragon hall up to the second floor. Freya is stunned. Both the dragon hall and the dragon treasury are sacred repositories built over 1,000 years, beginning with the first patriarch, Gilphus. The dragon hall contains countless books, including rare and even forbidden texts. The dragon treasury houses relics of former heads, legendary weapons, spirit medicines, artifacts, and treasures gathered across generations. These facilities are strictly controlled, and only a select few are ever granted access, especially to the second floor or higher of the dragon hall, which requires exceptional merit. Freya glances at Zeke in disbelief. Despite his boldness, he is still being recognized as outstanding. After granting the reward, the family head dismisses them. However, Zeke attempts to ask another question. Freya quickly grabs him by the collar and drags him toward the exit. Before leaving, Zeke turns back and tells the family head that as long as Balza continues suppressing his own emotions, no matter how hard he tries, he will never become truly strong. Freya is horrified and immediately ushers Zeke out. Once outside, she scolds him for speaking so recklessly in front of the family head. Zeke responds that he exercised as much restraint as possible. That answer only frustrates her further, and she insists that he use proper respect when addressing the head, just as he does with the instructors. Zeke replies that Balza is his parent, after all. Freya is deeply unsettled. Every child of the family drank ancient potion as an infant, making it impossible for them to defy Balza, who holds the power of the Dragon King, a being superior even to ancient dragons. That should make resistance unthinkable. Yet Zeke stood calmly before him without fear. For the first time, Freya wonders who Zeke truly is. She resolves to thoroughly investigate his birth records. Soon after, she asks which reward he intends to choose. Since he cannot take both, Zeke selects access to the Dragon Hall. For now, knowledge is far more valuable to him, as he lacks understanding of this era. Ringiz arrives, excitedly talking about entering the Dragon Hall. He praises the strike dragon combat arts and nurturing dragon spear arts he recently learned and looks forward to discovering even more advanced martial techniques. Laika also joins them, expressing her determination to absorb as much knowledge as possible within the allotted time. Zeke learns that access comes with limits. They may only enter the first floor under normal circumstances, and while they can read freely during the time limit, they may borrow only one book. Managing time wisely is crucial. Laika is surprised that Zeke chose the Dragon Hall over the Dragon Treasury, especially since the second floor contains even rarer martial arts manuals. Zeke simply reiterates that knowledge is his priority. The group soon enters the massive library. An instructor informs them that they have 5 hours inside and must remain quiet while strictly observing the time limit. Laika advises Zeke to first decide which book he intends to borrow, then spend the remaining time reading as much as possible. The Dragon Hall's interior is vast, lined with countless shelves overflowing with ancient texts. It is even more impressive than Zeke imagined. Now, the only question remains, will there be knowledge here capable of surprising even him? Inside the Dragon Hall, Zeke uncovers an overwhelming amount of information he had never encountered before. As he reads, complex emotions surface within him. He learns about dimensional rifts, chaos, magic, and the ancient connection between this world and another that formed nearly 1,000 years ago. About 9 centuries in the past, a tier suddenly appeared in the dimensional wall. These tiers were named rifts. Beyond them lay a chaotic realm known as the Chaos Realm, a world where terrifying creatures called chaos beasts roamed freely. To resist the invasion, the people of that other world cultivated a unique source power within themselves. The Eldragon family fought alongside them against the chaos. Through bonds forged in battle, for powerful warriors from that other world eventually married into the Eldragon family. They later became the founders of the 4 great Eldragon branch families that still exist today. As Zeke reads this history, certain mysteries begin to make sense, such as the strange black mist surrounding the Anger Boar and the nature of Lyca's lightning aura. However, what fascinates him most is something else entirely: magic. Magic is described as a new system of knowledge introduced from the other world. To Zeke, it feels like an entirely different discipline compared to traditional source power. His curiosity ignites, and he eagerly reaches for more books on the subject. Lost in excitement, Zeke accidentally shouts inside the library. At the same time, he notices a faint golden mist in the air. He quickly deduces that this may be an application of magic. Yet what truly amazes him is the sight of source power being manipulated like fine threads to move objects. The technique is precise and refined. The unseen librarian once again orders him to keep quiet. But for Zeke, witnessing such a method only fuels his curiosity. He boldly asks the person in charge to reveal themselves and demonstrate it directly. There is no response. Instead, invisible threads suddenly wrap around him, lifting him effortlessly and tossing him outside the building. The allotted 5 hours have already passed. Rather than feeling offended, Zeke is thrilled. The experience only deepens his fascination. Outside, Ringis and Lyca are waiting. Zeke asks whether they found books they liked. Ringis proudly says he borrowed a martial arts manual called Cloud Water Spear Arts and believes he grasped a fundamental movement technique from it. Celine shares that she learned a movement technique as well and borrowed Windflower Sword Arts. Raymond practiced the Eldragon-style Guardian Sword Arts inside and chose to borrow the Eldragon-style Guardian Shield Arts. Unbeknownst to them, every one of those martial arts manuals was originally created by Zeke in his previous life as a casual endeavor. Curious, Zeke asks Lyca what she selected. She reveals that she chose Heavy Wave Great Sword Arts, said to have been created by the first Patriarch, along with Heavy Wave Great Sword Arts, revised, an improved version refined by the 15th family head. At the mention of the 15th head, Zeke's thoughts immediately turn to Dragon's Breath and Strike Dragon combat arts, techniques also attributed to that same individual. He recalls that many martial arts he once created are preserved within the Dragon Hall, and quite a few have revised versions placed beside them. The possibility that those improved versions were modified by the 15th head intrigues him deeply. Staring back at the towering library, Zeke realizes how wrong he was. He had expected it to be dull. Now, he cannot wait to uncover what comes next. 5 years pass. Lyca has grown taller and is now 12 years old. After hearing that Zeke and the others have once again gathered at the training grounds, she heads there as well. Upon arriving, she finds Zeke standing calmly at the center of the field, surrounded by Celine, Raymond, and Ringis. The 3 of them circle him carefully, searching for an opening to make their move. The scene shifts to the main hall, where a soldier urgently reports to Balza about a newly formed rift within their territory. According to the investigation, there is roughly an 80% chance that magic water exists inside it. Magic water is no ordinary resource. Anyone who drinks it gains the potential to become a mage. Their body develops a special constitution that allows them to convert source power into an entirely different force known as mana. The techniques unleashed through mana, known as magic, sparked a revolution across the world. At the same time, fierce territorial conflicts erupted over the very source of magic power, magic springs. In this new age of magic, the number of mages a house possesses largely determines its military strength. However, within Eldragon territory, not a single magic spring exists. For a house without direct ownership of such a spring, there is only one way to obtain magic water: by conquering special rifts. Currently, the Eldragon family has only a handful of mages, including Balza himself. All of them are battle-hardened veterans who acquired magic water through dangerous rift conquests. Even so, their numbers are being steadily outmatched by rival houses that control magic springs. Conquering special rifts has therefore become Eldragon's top priority. The problem lies in the rift's location, the abundant dragon forest. This vast woodland is mostly within Eldragon territory, but part of it stretches into the lands of another powerful house, the Kerberos family. While Eldragon claims the forest, Kerberos asserts partial ownership and refers to their portion as the Great Abundant Forest. Although the rift itself has appeared within Eldragon land, the special domain formed around it could easily extend into Kerberos territory due to its scale and location. Given the Kerberos family's aggressive nature, there is a strong chance they will move to claim it. Balza knows it is only a matter of time before Kerberos detects the rift. Preparation is essential. Because it is a special rift, both sides will face limitations in how they can act, but Eldragon must move before Kerberos does. Balza immediately orders the captain to notify all dragon nests. A selection exam will be held. The scene then shifts to the training grounds. Zeke stands calmly as Selene, Ringies, and Raymond launch coordinated attacks against him. Despite their efforts, none of their strikes land effectively. Zeke calmly critiques each of them mid-spar. Ringies is putting too much force into his spear, which disrupts the proper flow of spear techniques. Selene focuses too heavily on speed and the number of strikes, leaving her attacks without weight. Raymond performs well defensively, but he remains overly passive and must grow more accustomed to taking the initiative. After pointing out their flaws, Zeke tells them to attack again. Watching from the side, Leica comments that allowing himself to be struck bare-bodied without using source power is reckless. Zeke casually replies that it is proper training. Thanks to this method, his body has grown remarkably sturdy even without reinforcing it with source power. Even as he speaks, their attacks continue to land, yet he shows no signs of injury. The others cannot help but marvel at his mysterious physical resilience. Leica then reveals that the senior students have given Zeke a nickname, the Demon Child of the Eastern Hall. She has actually come to deliver important news. Soon, children from the other dragon nests will be arriving. While most of the group expected something like this to happen eventually, Zeke seems unaware. When he asks where she heard such information, Leica explains that she deduced it simply by observing the instructor's conversations and movements. She also warns him to stay cautious. The Western Hall has one of the leading candidates for succession, someone comparable to both Zeke and herself. A few days later, all the students gather in one place. Freya arrives and immediately orders everyone to be silent. She announces that in 3 days' time, they will face the children of the other dragon nests in combat. The announcement leaves the upperclassmen stunned. Normally, inter-hall battles only take place during the graduation exam. However, Freya refuses to reveal the exact reason behind this sudden change. She only states that those who win these matches will be assigned a special mission. Hearing that, Zeke's interest is immediately piqued. Freya explains the format. The matches will be elimination style. 7 representatives will be selected from each of the East, West, South, and North halls. The students must decide by the end of the day who will participate. One upperclassman confidently declares that the 7 representatives should naturally be chosen from among the seniors. Freya quickly shuts that down. Selection will be open to all grades. That statement sparks tension. Several upperclassmen begin belittling the lowerclassmen, dismissing them as weak and inexperienced. Freya remains indifferent. She makes it clear that she does not care who participates, as long as the names are submitted on time. An upperclassman named Rick openly mocks the idea of including younger students, insisting that the strongest 7 will obviously come from the senior ranks. Leica steps forward. Calm but firm, she argues that lowerclassmen should also be considered. The seniors respond dismissively, claiming that ability, not noble bloodline, determines victory, and that experience gives them the advantage. In response, Leica releases her aura and reveals her star-level progression. The sudden display shocks the upperclassmen into silence. She agrees that ability should decide everything. Then she poses a simple question. Is there any upperclassman stronger than her? If not, then lowerclassmen deserve equal consideration. The seniors counter by saying Leica is an exception, but that the rest of the lowerclassmen cannot compete with them. At that moment, Zeke finally steps in. He casually proposes that they continue fighting internally until only 7 remain from each side. Leica rejects that idea. Instead, she suggests holding open preliminaries. Anyone who wishes to compete, regardless of grade, can participate. The strongest 7 will earn their place fairly. The upperclassmen reluctantly agree, though they consider it a waste of time. Without hesitation, Zeke declares that he will enter the preliminaries. He turns to Rengis, Celine, and Raymond, telling them to join as well. They are visibly shocked by his decision. But Zeke reminds them that this is the perfect opportunity to prove the results of their training. The pressure will be immense, yet they must give it everything they have. Leica then asks if any other lower-classmen are willing to step forward. Silence fills the area. No one dares to volunteer. In the end, it is decided. The lower-classmen who wish to prove themselves will face the so-called superior upperclassmen in the preliminaries. The day of the preliminaries finally arrives. Selected students from both upperclassmen and lowerclassmen gather at the arena. As expected, many of the seniors are overflowing with confidence, once again mocking the younger students as weaklings. Aside from Leica, most of the lowerclassmen are only at the 2-star level. Hearing the taunts, Rengis, Raymond, and Celine grow tense. But Zeke calmly reminds them of the 5 relentless years they've spent training together. They have endured far more than simple mockery. It's time to believe in the results of their effort. An upperclassman shouts for everyone to stop talking, and the match officially begins. What happens next shocks the spectators. Rengis, Raymond, and Celine begin overwhelming their senior opponents. One by one, upperclassmen are defeated. Zeke watches closely and nods in approval. Rengis' deflection technique and his ability to spot openings have sharpened significantly. Celine skillfully executes the multi-strike sequences of the Windflower Sword arts. Raymond, once overly defensive, now transitions smoothly between shield and sword techniques, showing far more initiative in combat. Each of them demonstrates remarkable growth. Zeke believes that continued real combat will only strengthen their confidence further. Leica steps forward next. Her battle ends decisively as well. She defeats her upperclassman opponent with authority. The seniors are left stunned. A brown-haired upperclassman refuses to accept what he just witnessed. He insists that a 3-star fighter should never lose to someone at 2 stars. Zeke calmly calls him naive. Age and star rankings are merely indicators, not guarantees. In real combat, the only truth is victory or defeat. The strong are those who win. The weak are those who lose. It's that simple. The brown-haired senior grows furious, unable to grasp Zeke's reasoning. Zeke continues, explaining that whether someone has stars or not, if they don't have the will to fight, they fall. Strength is not about titles or numbers. It is about the ability to prevail. Enraged, the upperclassman declares he will not hold back against Zeke. Zeke casually invites him to demonstrate the martial arts he has mastered and the fruits of his training. Those words strike a nerve. The senior charges in anger, unleashing his techniques, only to be met with a single clean punch from Zeke. In an instant, he collapses to the ground in defeat. Zeke gives him a thumbs up, remarking that he has trained well. Leica dryly comments that it is ironic to praise someone after defeating them before they could even showcase their skills. The surrounding spectators quietly agree. Meanwhile, at the West Hall training grounds, another scene unfolds. The students there are being thoroughly defeated by one of the leading candidates for the next family head, Venial Fafnald Eldragon. His overwhelming strength leaves no room for resistance. Venial's right-hand aide, Alan, reports that the selection process has been completed. All chosen representatives are 3-star level. Among them is a 12-year-old lower-classman named Letton. Venial notices Letton and offers him praise, suggesting that if he proves useful, he may become one of his subordinates. Letton beams with pride at the recognition. Confident in Venial's leadership, Letton believes the West Hall cannot lose. He is certain they will succeed in the special mission. And when Venial eventually becomes the next family head, Letton dreams of serving directly under him. Alan then steps forward again, requesting permission to share additional news. He informs Venial that Leica will represent the East Hall in their selection team. At the mention of her name, Venial's expression darkens slightly. He finds her participation troublesome. Still, he rises with confidence and declares that no matter how talented she may be, victory will belong to them. He intends to win the special mission and prove to his older brothers that the position of the next head belongs to him alone. The day of the selection team exam finally arrives. The Coliseum is packed with students from all 4 halls, and the atmosphere is tense with anticipation. Leica quietly mentions that despite the crowd, many students drop out before reaching this stage. Hearing that, Ringies grows visibly downcast. Those who failed are no longer present. They are labeled pseudo-dragons, a term also associated with his father. Noticing his mood, Leica gently encourages him. They have been chosen as representatives of the East Hall. That alone is something to take pride in. Ringies nods and resolves to give it his all. Meanwhile, Zeke stands apart, silently observing the crowd. When asked what he is doing, he calmly explains that he is gauging the overall fighting strength of the participants. Just then, an upperclassman unexpectedly praises Zeke. It is the same group of seniors who once mocked them. Now, after witnessing their performance, they show genuine respect toward both Leica and Zeke. As Zeke had predicted, nearly every participant, except those from the East Hall, is at the 3-star level. There are no 4-star fighters present, but several appear to be on the verge of reaching that stage. The prospect excites Zeke. He wonders what kind of techniques he will witness this time. While Leica chats with Ringies and the others, a girl suddenly hugs her from behind. It is her cousin, Sandy Typhona. Sandy cheerfully asks how Leica has been. Startled at first, Leica replies that she is doing well. Celine looks confused, so Leica introduces Sandy as her cousin and the daughter of the Typhona family head, one of the 4 great branch families. The revelation shocks Raymond, Celine, and Ringies. Sandy's expression shifts as she looks at them. She asks who they are. Leica introduces them as her friends. However, Sandy bluntly states that they do not appear capable of standing beside a candidate for the next family head. Zeke steps into the conversation, remarking that their abilities will be proven in battle soon enough. Leica then introduces Zeke to Sandy. She recognizes him immediately as the rumored illegitimate child. Her tone turns dismissive, belittling him openly. Leica questions why she is behaving that way. Sandy responds that even if Zeke's birth status is unconventional, he remains Leica's rival. Therefore, she should not refer to him as a mere friend. She also points out that none of the East Hall students, aside from Leica, are at the 3-star level. In her view, that reflects poorly on their overall quality. Zeke calmly warns her not to underestimate them, or she may be caught off guard. His response irritates her. She snaps, asking whether someone of his background is trying to lecture her. Zeke clarifies that it is not advice, only a warning. Tension rises between them, but before it can escalate further, the North Hall's representative, Edgy's Vanblade, steps in and tells Sandy to stop. Ringies seems to recognize his name. Sandy protests, telling Edgy's not to interfere. However, he reminds her that the selection battle is about to begin and now is not the time for arguments. At that moment, the captain of the Gold Dragon Corps, Teach Mentrick, enters the arena. His presence immediately silences the crowd. All students straighten their posture and focus. An official announcement echoes across the Coliseum. The selection exam has begun. The selection exam is officially announced as a tournament-style elimination battle involving all 4 halls. First, the halls are divided into 2 groups, with the winning halls advancing to the finals. The battles follow a one-on-one duel format, where each hall sends out fighters in a predetermined order from a roster of 7 participants. The first hall to secure 4 victories wins the match. Once the order is set, it cannot be changed, making strategy a crucial factor in determining the outcome. The stakes are incredibly high. The winners of this tournament will be assigned a special mission of great importance to the Eldragon family. Successfully completing it will significantly contribute to the family's future and serve as a major step toward earning the position of head. To determine the brackets, the examiner calls each hall's representative forward to draw a stone from a box. The East Hall representative, Venial, steps up first and selects a stone before leaving. Recognizing Venial, Leica informs Zeke that he is also a candidate for the head position. Zeke quickly realizes that it's not just Venial. The entire West Hall is filled with powerful warriors, creating a noticeable gap in strength compared to the others. Back in the East Hall group, Zeke spots Letton, whom he hasn't seen since the entrance exam. Letton has clearly improved, having reached the 3-star level, showing his dedication to training. However, tensions rise when Letton and his companions notice Ringies standing alongside Zeke and the others, reacting with visible anger. Soon after, the North Hall's representative, Edgies, and the South Hall's representative also step forward to draw their stones. When it's finally East Hall's turn, Leica instructs Zeke to go, stating that he is the strongest among them. This decision doesn't sit well with some, especially Laika's cousin, Sandy, who questions why Zeke was chosen over Laika. However, Laika stands firm in her decision, confidently asserting Zeke's strength despite Sandy's objections. Following the examiner's instructions, each representative channels their source power into the stones, officially finalizing the brackets. The matchups are revealed. East Hall will face North Hall, while West Hall will battle South Hall. As the participants assess their opponents, Ringies is visibly shaken after noticing a particularly intimidating individual from the North Hall staring directly at him. However, an even more personal conflict emerges. Laika is set to face her cousin Sandy, who is determined to confront her and remind her of her responsibilities and position. Meanwhile, Edgies approaches Zeke and greets him once again, as they are now confirmed to face each other in the first match. Rather than feeling nervous, Zeke is genuinely excited, sensing a strong connection between them. Both fighters share the same competitive spirit, eagerly looking forward to their upcoming battle. Finally, the match between East Hall and North Hall begins. Rick steps forward first, clearly overwhelmed by the tense atmosphere, but he still declares that he will do his best to secure a victory. His nervousness worries both Laika and Zeke, who can tell he is under immense pressure. As the examiner signals the start, Rick charges at his opponent. Watching closely, Laika comments that this will not be an easy fight. Zeke agrees but explains that, in terms of pure skill, Rick is not significantly inferior to his opponent. Under normal circumstances, he would have a solid chance of winning. However, this is Rick's first time fighting in front of such a large audience, and the added pressure of representing his hall is affecting his performance. In contrast, fighters like Sandy and Edgies remain completely composed, even appearing to enjoy the situation. Zeke points out that both of them are already close to reaching the 4-star level, which is why they are not easily shaken. He also suggests that Laika should face Sandy, as their similar techniques would make it a valuable learning experience for her. Despite his efforts, Rick ultimately loses the match. Next, Marin steps up, but she is just as nervous as Rick. Unfortunately, she also suffers a defeat. Feeling guilty, both Rick and Marin apologize to Zeke, but he reassures them that this is not a life-or-death battlefield. Instead, it is a safe environment where they can learn from their mistakes and grow stronger. Zeke's encouragement lifts their spirits, and he then turns his attention to Ringies. With 2 consecutive losses, the next match becomes crucial, which only makes Ringies even more anxious. He nervously asks Zeke not to mention the losses, admitting that he is already under immense stress, especially since his opponent is a particularly intimidating upperclassman unlike anyone he has faced before. To calm him down, Zeke gives clear and practical advice. He tells Ringies to focus solely on his opponent's weapon. If the enemy thrusts, he should parry. If the attack comes upward, he should pull back. If the opponent swings downward, he should step forward and counter with a thrust. Instead of overthinking, Ringies should simply react to the weapon in front of him, just like he always does. Following this guidance, Ringies begins to center himself. Zeke quietly praises his ability to focus, noting that while he still needs guidance to reach that state, once he learns to do it naturally, he will grow even stronger. As the match begins, some students from Ringies' village mock him, doubting his chances against the upperclassmen. However, the moment the fight starts, his opponent charges straight at him, only for Ringies to dodge effortlessly. The upperclassman quickly adjusts, closing the distance to limit Ringies' range advantage. The tension rises, but Zeke remains calm, telling the others to trust Ringies. At that moment, Ringies spots an opening and strikes decisively, catching his opponent off guard. Without hesitation, he follows up with another precise attack, knocking his opponent to the ground. With that, Ringies secures a stunning victory. Watching the outcome, Zeke confidently remarks that the tide of the battle is finally beginning to turn. Following Ringies' victory, East Hall begins to build strong momentum, steadily securing consecutive wins. Both the 4th and 5th matches end in East Hall's favor, bringing them to the brink of overall victory. With just one more win needed, the decisive 6th match begins, Laika versus her cousin, Sandy. Before the fight starts, Sandy admits she is surprised that East Hall managed to win 2 matches in a row. While she acknowledges the strength of Laika's teammates, she dismisses their importance, stating that companions are secondary when it comes to becoming the head. In her view, Laika herself lacks the overwhelming power required for that position, especially since she isn't even ranked first in East Hall. However, Laika firmly responds that she has not given up on becoming the head, and that she now has the strength to defeat Sandy. Irritated by what she sees as arrogance, Sandy decides to prove her wrong. The moment the match begins, she vanishes, shocking the audience, and instantly reappears behind Laika, urging her to demonstrate her strength. Laika reacts in time and blocks the surprise attack, but Sandy immediately follows up with a relentless barrage of strikes, quickly gaining the upper hand. Watching the exchange, Edgies questions how well Laika can hold her ground against someone who has mastered lightning greatsword techniques even better than she has. Laika is gradually pushed back and even suffers minor injuries, causing Ringies and Raymond to grow increasingly concerned. Refusing to back down, Laika charges forward, but Sandy criticizes her for reverting to her bad habit of swinging wildly under pressure. Seizing the opportunity, Sandy intensifies her assault, leaving Laika badly injured. She continues to criticize Laika's lack of improvement, pointing out that she hasn't even managed to become the top fighter in East Hall. Sandy adds that if Laika had joined North Hall, she would never have allowed her to fall this far. Despite the harsh words, Laika refuses to give up. However, Sandy coldly tells her to surrender, insisting that she cannot win at her current level. She even expresses frustration over not forcing Laika to join North Hall from the beginning. Still, Laika stands her ground, determined to fight on. Growing more frustrated, Sandy accelerates her attacks, striking from behind and overwhelming Laika. Unable to counter effectively, Laika is forced to endure the onslaught, leaving the East Hall students deeply worried. The only one who remains calm is Zeke, who confidently states that Laika is on the verge of breaking through her limits. Deciding to end the match, Sandy unleashes her final attack. However, to everyone's shock, Laika remains standing. Even Sandy is visibly surprised. Laika then reveals that her past self might have fallen here, but over the past 5 years, she has trained relentlessly. With renewed determination, she declares that the real battle is only just beginning. Before the match begins, Zeke notices that Laika is unusually nervous. Her opponent is Sandy, the very person who helped her learn the basics of the lightning greatsword arts. While Laika was taught the fundamentals by her uncle, the current head of the Typhoon family, she often turned to Sandy whenever she struggled. Over time, Sandy became more than just family. She was like a mentor. Because of that, Laika has never been able to defeat her, not even once. She even doubts whether her 5 years of training are enough to close that gap. Sensing her hesitation, Zeke reminds her of everything they have worked on together. He tells her to recall those 5 long years of training and trust the process. At first, Laika feels unsure, but Zeke points out her biggest flaw. When emotions take over, her focus narrows. That's exactly why he trained her to remain calm in battle. If she can stay composed, she'll be able to clearly read her opponent's movements, even in the heat of combat. Still uncertain, Laika questions whether she can truly defeat Sandy. Zeke reassures her, saying that someone with her natural talent becomes incredibly powerful once they can properly see and understand their opponent. His words finally help her steady herself. Before the match begins, Zeke gives her one final piece of advice. Observe Sandy's techniques carefully. If she does, she won't just win, she'll grow even stronger. As the fight unfolds, Laika follows that advice. Instead of panicking, she carefully observes Sandy's lightning greatsword techniques, taking her attacks head-on while analyzing every movement. Gradually, something clicks. She begins to truly understand the flow of Sandy's style. Then, everything changes. Laika suddenly charges forward, and this time, she's the one overwhelming Sandy, not giving her any room to recover. The only technique she previously lacked was tempo variation, but now she begins to apply it seamlessly. Sandy is visibly shocked, as this isn't something that can normally be copied instantly just by observation. Ringies and the others, who were worried moments ago, are now left in awe of Laika's talent. Zeke, however, understands exactly what happened. This is the result of their training. Laika has learned to analyze her opponent calmly, even while under pressure, allowing her to adapt in real time. Previously, Laika would lose control in battle, focusing only on her own attacks without awareness of her opponent. But now, she fights with composure, observing and adapting at the same time. By studying the same sword style mid-combat, she has reached an entirely new level. The battle intensifies as both fighters clash with everything they have. However, thanks to her rigorous physical training with Zeke, Laika gradually gains the upper hand. Finally, she decides to end the match, unleashing her ultimate lightning greatsword technique, Grand Thunder. Sandy attempts to block the attack, but she is completely overwhelmed. Acknowledging Laika's growth, she offers a brief compliment before collapsing. With that, the match ends in Laika's victory and secures the overall win for East Hall. Returning to her team, Laika is praised by Zeke for her performance, though he jokingly complains about losing his chance to fight. Laika admits she's relieved she won, because otherwise Zeke would have had to face Edgies. Curious, Zeke asks if she knows him. While she doesn't know him personally, she explains that Edgies is widely recognized as the greatest genius of the Vanblade family. She adds that even for Zeke, a match against Edgies would have been unpredictable. There's no telling how it might have turned out. Just then, the examiner announces that although East Hall has already secured victory, the remaining matches will still continue. Zeke narrows his eyes at Edgies, wondering what the real intention is, but in the end, he doesn't mind. As long as he gets to fight, that's all that matters to him. Edgies is eager to face Zeke, especially after learning that Zeke is the East Hall's representative despite Laika's presence. What intrigues him even more is that Zeke is only at the 2-star level. Curious about this, Edgies seeks a direct confrontation. Hearing this, Zeke is genuinely excited, noting that they seem to share the same mindset. He has also been looking forward to crossing blades with Edgies, recognizing him as an exceptional fighter among many talented warriors. Without hesitation, Zeke draws his katana, and the examiner signals the start of the match. In an instant, Edgies closes a massive distance with astonishing speed, leaving Zeke impressed by his flawless footwork. As Edgies launches his attack, Zeke notices something unusual. He cannot sense the presence of the blade at all. Even so, he twists his body at the last possible moment and narrowly dodges the strike, despite Edgies being certain it would land. Smiling, Zeke praises him and encourages him to show more of his martial arts. Edgies presses forward with another attack, his blade's trajectory incredibly difficult to read. Though Zeke manages to evade most strikes, Edgies still succeeds in landing a hit. As the exchange continues, Zeke skillfully dodges while openly admiring Edgies' talent. His movements are fluid and ever-changing, yet they never sacrifice speed or power. His source power flows efficiently, without waste, and his attacks are sharp enough to match Zeke's breathing and rhythm. Zeke acknowledges that such precision is only possible through relentless training. Despite his continuous assault, Edgies is unable to land a decisive blow, which leaves him both surprised and frustrated. He asks Zeke what kind of training allows him to move like this. In response, Zeke casually invites him to train together and find out for himself. Finally, Zeke goes on the offensive. Edgies barely manages to block the strike, but the impact makes his hands tremble. Zeke experiments with varying his breathing patterns, yet Edgies adapts even to that, proving just how extraordinary he is. Realizing this, Zeke concludes that Edgies is even more exceptional than he initially thought. At this point, Zeke has observed enough. He begins to understand Edgies' techniques. When Edgies repeats a familiar attack, Zeke dodges it just as before, but something changes. Even after evading, Zeke is still wounded, which only makes the fight more thrilling for him. Meanwhile, Sandy regains consciousness after her defeat. Though she realizes she lost, she feels proud of Laika's growth. Her classmates, worried about her, apologize for not being helpful, but Sandy reassures them that the opponent was simply stronger and encourages them to improve together. When she learns that Zeke is currently fighting Edgies, she is shocked. Watching the battle, Sandy is stunned to see Edgies manifest 5 aura blades, clear proof that he is fighting at full power. This reminds her of Laika's earlier claim that Zeke is the strongest among them. No matter what technique Edgies uses, Zeke continues to counter it perfectly. Even after a prolonged fight, Zeke shows no signs of exhaustion, prompting Edgies to question what kind of physique he possesses. Zeke simply replies that he has invested heavily in building his basic stamina, emphasizing its importance. Inspired, Edges resolves to train his body even further and continues his relentless attacks. Although Edgy's current level places him around the lower end of the upper tier, his talent at such a young age suggests immense potential. During the battle, Zeke realizes a fundamental difference between martial arts of the past and the present. 1,000 years ago, the focus was on the physical motion of techniques, with energy used as a supplement. In the modern era, however, the manipulation of source power itself has become the core of martial arts. Zeke understands that he had overlooked this shift for far too long. As the fight drags on for nearly an hour, neither side shows signs of backing down. However, Leica senses that the end is near. Zeke has now fully analyzed Edgy's movements. Using everything he has learned, Zeke develops a new technique on the spot. Edgy's, aware that victory may be out of reach, still resolves to fight until the very end. He launches his final attack, but Zeke counters with a modified version of the Dragon Destruction Combat Art's second form, Fist Star. The impact shatters the ground and decisively defeats Edgy's. The entire arena is left in shock by the overwhelming display of power. After repairing the arena, the examiner announces the next match. Ringies and Raymond, already impressed by Zeke, now admire him even more after witnessing his victory over Edgy's. Looking ahead, the next opponents include other head candidates, including General. Both South Hall and West Hall appear to have formidable fighters, leaving Zeke curious about how the next battle will unfold. However, contrary to his expectations, the match between West Hall and South Hall quickly becomes one-sided, largely due to Venial's overwhelming strength, leaving even the examiner visibly stunned. He questions whether Venial truly possesses enough strength to defeat Lila Sonar so easily. Nevertheless, the result is official. West Hall is declared the winner, and the finals are set. East Hall versus West Hall, scheduled to begin in 1 hour. The outcome leaves many students uneasy, as something about the match feels off. Zeke, in particular, notices that the gap in ability between Venial and Lila wasn't large enough to justify such a decisive result. More importantly, Lila's source power flow appeared unstable, far from her usual standard. In that condition, it becomes clear that something was wrong with her, which likely led to the one-sided defeat. Even the examiner seems to have picked up on this irregularity. Raymond acknowledges Venial's strength as a head candidate, impressed that he defeated Lila so quickly, but the group continues to question how one-sided the match was. Ringies points out that West Hall, as a whole, is filled with exceptionally strong fighters. Although this realization is discouraging, it also motivates the team to push themselves and aim for victory no matter what. Zeke is pleased to see their determination, but his attention shifts to Leica. Unlike him, she doesn't seem to have noticed anything unusual about Lila's condition. If she believes that Venial's victory was purely due to overwhelming strength, then her shaken reaction makes sense. However, since Zeke himself lacks full details, he chooses not to offer uncertain advice. Noticing her unease, Ringies asks if she's alright. Leica brushes it off, claiming she's fine, and leaves the arena to clear her thoughts. She heads to the garden, reflecting on what she just witnessed. Even Edgy's couldn't defeat Lila without taking damage, yet Venial managed to overwhelm her effortlessly. Leica recalls the last time she faced Venial. They were both 5 years old, and she lost. Since then, she has trained relentlessly, driven by the desire to defeat him one day. Now, she believes she finally has the strength to win. However, realizing that she may not even get the chance to face him, since the match order suggests Zeke will fight him instead, only frustrates her further. To her, it feels like she is admitting defeat before even trying. At that moment, Venial approaches her. Rather than having a genuine conversation, he begins to belittle her. Leica has no interest in engaging, but Venial arrogantly remarks that if he becomes the head, she might end up as his wife, so she should be less selective. His words anger her, and she tries to walk away. Before she can leave, Venial provokes her further, suggesting that she still believes she cannot defeat him, just like in the past. His words cause her to hesitate. He then places a hand on her shoulder, pressuring her to submit, claiming he would treat her well if she did. Leica immediately pushes his hand away, firmly telling him to stop, and walks off without looking back. As she leaves, Venial reveals a darker side of himself. It becomes clear that he did something subtle when he touched her shoulder. Now, Only Zeke remains as an obstacle. Deciding it would be troublesome if Zeke noticed anything unusual, Venial plans to deal with him during the match. Observing that Zeke occasionally allows himself to be hit, Venial begins setting up his strategy. Afterward, Venial calmly washes his hand in a nearby waterfall. As the water shifts color, he confidently declares that victory will belong to them. Rick begins to doubt himself, worrying that he might be the weakest not only in East Hall, but also compared to the fighters of West Hall. This fear makes him question whether they can truly win the match. Noticing his hesitation, Zeke snaps him out of it with a punch, asking where all his earlier confidence went. He reminds Rick to fight with the intent to win, regardless of the difference in strength, and to trust the training he has gone through. Zeke then gives him one final piece of advice: relax his shoulders. The Great Power Fist style is about gathering all of one's strength into a single point before striking. If Rick tenses up, that power will scatter instead of focusing. Taking this to heart, Rick corrects his posture and regains his confidence. Watching this, Laika finds it strange that Zeke seems so knowledgeable about a fighting style he has never formally learned. She questions him, but Zeke casually brushes it off, saying it's simply because he is who he is, leaving Laika speechless. As the match begins, Rick faces his opponent with determination, despite his fear. The opponent charges first, forcing Rick to block with aura and step back. The attacks keep coming, giving Rick no room to breathe, while his opponent mocks him with a smile. Rick tries to counter, but his movements are too slow, making it easy for the opponent to evade. Realizing he can't win like this, Rick calms himself and remembers Zeke's advice. Relaxing his shoulders, he focuses everything into a single moment. This time, he cleanly dodges the incoming attack, counters decisively, and slams his opponent into the wall, securing victory. Meanwhile, Venial calls over his subordinates, who immediately panic and begin apologizing. Showing no mercy, he strikes one of them and coldly orders the rest to crush their opponents, no matter what. Next, Marin steps up, determined to win. As the examiner starts the match, she charges first and uses her red flame sword style, Spark Slash. However, her opponent dodges with ease and retaliates with overwhelming force, relentlessly attacking her without holding back. Laika, Rengiz, and the others grow furious at how far he is taking it. Rick even tries to intervene, but Raymond stops him, reminding him that interfering would lead to disqualification. The match ends with Marin completely defeated. Her teammates rush to her side, deeply worried. Rick confronts her opponent, but he coldly explains that this is a tournament, real combat, and he simply ensured victory by going all out. When they protest, saying he went too far, he mocks them for being soft, stating that West Hall shows no mercy in real battles. They crush their enemies completely. Laika realizes this brutality likely stems from Venial's orders, but there's nothing she can do. The opponent leaves, warning them to worry about themselves before they end up the same way. At that moment, Letton approaches Rengiz and calmly suggests that he should forfeit. When Rengiz remains silent, Letton grows irritated and taunts him further, even bringing up how he used to treat him back in the village. As Laika tries to step in, Rengiz stops her and firmly declares that he won't run away. He will surpass Letton today. This only angers Letton more. After Marin is taken away for treatment, Rengiz steps onto the battlefield to face Letton. Just before the match begins, he suddenly hears Zeke's voice in his head. Zeke has recreated a form of telepathy he once experienced, using it to deliver a single piece of advice. Clouds drift freely, and water flows gently. He tells Rengiz to remember this when he struggles. The match begins with Rengiz attacking first, but Letton easily dodges and counters with overwhelming aggression. Rengiz is pushed onto the defensive and even gets injured while trying to block. No matter how hard he tries to read Letton's attack patterns, he fails to keep up. Every attempt to deflect or counter is turned against him. Letton closes in, taunting him relentlessly, claiming to be superior in every way. He even insults Rengiz's father, calling him a weak pseudo-dragon and saying Rengiz is no different. Enraged, Rengiz lashes out, but Letton strikes him down, knocking him to the ground. Overwhelmed, Rengiz begins to lose his will, believing himself to be nothing more than weak and worthless. At that moment, a memory surfaces, his father's words, echoing the same phrase Zeke told him. clouds drift freely and water flows gently. Something within Ringies begins to change, and even the examiner senses it. As Letten moves in to finish the match, Ringies suddenly blocks the attack with ease. The shift is so unexpected that Letten is forced to retreat, visibly shaken by the sudden change in Ringies' presence. Ringies breaks through to the 3-star level, placing him on equal footing with Letten. This sudden shift leaves Letten both frustrated and shaken, as he had always believed himself to be far superior. Refusing to accept reality, Letten launches another series of attacks, but this time, Ringies effortlessly dodges every strike. No matter how aggressively Letten presses forward, none of his attacks connect. Instead, his growing frustration only makes his movements more reckless. Observing the fight, Zeke explains to the others that Ringies has taken a step closer to grasping the true essence of his martial art. While Zeke himself demonstrated a glimpse of it earlier, Ringies has now made it his own in the middle of battle, though he hasn't fully realized it yet. At this moment, Ringies is completely focused, channeling everything into defeating his opponent. Then, Ringies shifts to the offensive. Just as water doesn't always flow gently, once it becomes a raging current, nothing can stand in its path. Letten is unable to withstand the overwhelming force of Ringies' attack and is ultimately knocked unconscious. With that, the examiner declares East Hall the winner. At first, Ringies is confused by the announcement, but Laika and the others quickly rush over, congratulating him on both his victory and his breakthrough to the 3-star level. As it finally sinks in, Ringies feels a deep sense of pride in himself. Laika and Raymond then ask about the final move he used, which looked like a massive water dragon surging upward like a waterfall. Surprisingly, Ringies doesn't even realize what he performed. Zeke explains that the technique is called Rising Dragon Pierce, originally recorded in the 2nd volume of the Cloud Water Spear style. He praises Ringies for reaching it on his own through pure instinct and effort. The team celebrates his achievement, filling Ringies with joy. Zeke reflects that although he originally created this martial art, he never formally documented it. Over time, later generations recorded and divided it into multiple volumes. To prevent immature fighters from accessing its deeper essence, the true meaning was hidden within higher levels. Yet Ringies, through his own strength, has managed to uncover that path on his own. The examiner then instructs East Hall to clear the arena for the next match. Riding the momentum of Ringies' victory, East Hall's morale reaches its peak. However, West Hall quickly regroups after their loss, and the battles become even more intense. In the 4th match, Celine puts up a strong fight, but narrowly loses. In the 5th match, Raymond pushes himself to the limit and secures a hard-fought victory. With the score now at 3 wins and 2 losses, everything comes down to the next match. If Laika wins, East Hall will claim overall victory. Before the match begins, Zeke approaches Laika and asks how she's feeling. Caught off guard, she blushes and pushes him away, insisting that she feels fine as always. However, while no one else notices, Zeke senses that something about the situation feels slightly off.